evening, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, members of the public. The Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education is returning from its closed session. This meeting was called to order this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. and we are now returning, Sarah, about 6:20 in the evening. There are two items to report out, but just to let everybody know that all members of the Board of Education have been present and participated in closed session. The first item that we'd like to report out is case DN 1002. The summary of the agreement is as follows. The district agrees to place student at STEM 3 Academy, a non-public school. Parents agree to sign and consent to students' June 6th, 2018 IEP amendment within 5 days of execution of this agreement. The district agrees to reimburse parents in an amount not to exceed $49,500 for educational services privately provided to the student between January 15, 2015 and the last day of the 2017-2018 regular school year. The district shall pay reasonable and compensable attorney's fees related to OAH case number 20171110576 to the law offices of Henry Tavmasian in the amount not to exceed $30,000. The motion was made by member Craig Foster, seconded by member Ralph Metcher, and that was a unanimous vote of the Board of Education. The second item that we'd like to report out of our closed session this afternoon is DN 1001. The summary of the agreement is as follows. The district will contract with K&M School for the first semester of the 2018-19 school year to provide credit-based instruction for an amount not to exceed $30,660. The district will hold an IEP meeting near the end of the first semester. If student is making progress and remains on track to graduate at the end of the 2018-19 school year, the district will continue to fund credit-based instruction for the second semester as determined by the IEP team to meet the graduation requirements. While enrolled and attending K&M, parent agrees to hold the district harmless for student meeting her goals and objectives on the May 1st, 2018 IEP. This was a unanimous decision of the Board of Education, moved by member Foster and seconded by Mr. Ralph Metcher. This concludes that which we need to report out. Again, all members of the Board of Education are present. Dr. Jati, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Would you please?
Thank you, Dr. Drati. That now brings us to the approval of tonight's agenda. Draw our attention to an item that we have time-stamped. That's our joint session with the Financial Oversight Committee. Colleagues, that's set for 7 o'clock p.m. I'm hoping we can get much work done in advance of that time. So if there's a motion to approve the agenda with the allowance for the chair to zigzag back and forth, moved by Maria and seconded by John. All in favor, say aye, please. Aye. Great. We're going to pull on the consent. I have the cheat sheet here. So we've approved the agenda. It's under consent, Lori, for the things that have to be pulled. So we've approved the agenda with some allowance for the chair to move about on the agenda before our 7 o'clock time-stamped item. So that now brings us to commendations and recognitions, which there are none this evening. And then we'll move to communications, and that brings us to our CTA update. Approval of the minutes, can't forget that. Thank you, Sarah. June 28th minutes we have before us. Thank you. Oscar moved. Is there a second on the minutes? Seconded by Maria. Thank you. And member Foster is recusing himself. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And we have the one abstention, Sarah, so it's 6-0-1. That now brings us to our communications, and I see that we have a visitor. Welcome for our CTA report.
Thank you.
Hi, I am a member of the Executive Board of SMMCTA, and I'll be here tonight in place of Sarah Braff. She is attending the CTA President's Conference in San Jose currently and gathering information about the changes with the recent Supreme Court decision. I'm here to say thank you and to speak of some concerns. So first, the thank yous. I was fortunate to participate in the IISS summer school at Grant Elementary School. And I wanted to say thank you to the board and to the district for providing the support for our Tier 3 students and also for the English learners that are Tier 2 for the SLA, Science Language Academy pilot. The organization, the support with the programs, the lower class size and the targeting were really helped for quite an effective program this summer. And I know that some board members did get a chance to visit, so thank you. And I think that I'm hoping that it shows that the extra support and targeted support really help our students. So thank you for providing that opportunity. I also wanted to say thank you for providing the support for reading workshop. We just completed a 4-day teacher college reading workshop, Advanced Academy from New York, from Columbia. And thank you for providing the support. Teachers do work as lifelong learners, and we do work on professional growth during the school year, during the summer, and when this is what we do as educators. And I want to thank you for providing the support of bringing the New York program here to Santa Monica to continue the work that we've been doing, and that we hope that we can continue to grow this program. The teachers that were available and were highly involved and really appreciative, and it seems the type of work that we want to do that is imperative for students. I spoke with Irene about this, and I just want to mention that there were many inspirational moments, but one of the inspirational moments that we heard from our presenter, Colleen Cruz, was that parents reading to students, to their children, is an indicator for success in college, and that research shows that parents start to drop off by 2nd grade when children can read to themselves, and that up to about 2nd grade, 80% of parents are reading to their children, and that it starts to drop off then, and that if we can have a message both from teachers and education in our community at our schools to our families, that to keep up that support as children become their own readers, to have those discussions and conversations. So again, I want to thank you for providing and bringing us this quality program to Santa Monica. I'm here also to speak about some concerns. The FOC report will be looking at the analysis of the costs of healthcare in our district. And we realize that healthcare costs are rising. We also realize that we did negotiate for new employees to contribute to their healthcare starting in 2014. But we are very concerned about the impact to our newer employees with the high cost of living, the high cost of housing, commuting, and when contributing to their health care, they are also getting to be the lowest paid employees. We're concerned about retaining high quality teachers and bringing in new teachers to Santa Monica, as I'm sure, as we all are here today. We want to thank the FOC for providing the analysis of the costs for insurance, and the Joint Committee for Negotiations will use it as it moves forward with its work. We look forward that our district can provide the best possible benefits to all our members and to all SMMUSD employees. And we do want to say that when we understand that costs are rising, but when we originally negotiated it, this issue of having the 2 tiers, newer employees it was estimated would contribute $50 a month. And we understand that this is a variable, but it's really troubling about where we are today. The other issue I wanted to talk about that will be on our agenda tonight is there have been some teacher questions and concerns that were raised about the construction of the new the Discovery Building, I believe at Samo High. There's concerns when we're looking at plans, we know it's late in the day, about safety with the glass walls, and also the issue around the carpeting and the acoustics. There's concerns about the flow and cleanliness when you have carpeting, about maintenance. And we understand that acoustics are an issue, but we're hopeful that other solutions could be found. We've posed some questions and we just haven't heard a response back on that, so I wanted to bring that up tonight. And thank you for your work, and we look forward to this upcoming school year, since this is the first meeting of the 2018-19 school year, correct? Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipson. Carol, welcome.
So I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and I do want to read just into the record parts of my report. I usually don't read them, but this whole Janus decision is just so upsetting. So SEIU, along with the unions across the country, continue to fight in supporting its memberships attacks against the attacks from the Right to Work and other such organizations. Here in SMMUSD, SEIU has more than 90% membership, and we will continue to have the conversations with our members, telling and sharing our stories of what unions stand for, and not just in our workplace, but in our communities and in our nation. We are scheduling more trainings for members in voter registration and educating non-members and community members of the importance of union membership and supporting and partnering with unions to ensure we leave a more just future for our children and grandchildren. Currently, SEIU is working on multiple campaigns on at the legislative level to support our membership and other classified employees. One is the summer relief for classified employees who are not fortunate enough to receive a summer work assignment. We have been sending bills up for more than 5 years now to get this legislation passed, and we will continue to battle it until it is won. We are also campaigning for bargaining rights for our in-home child care providers. We have been battling this for the 15 long years for them to gain the right to negotiate a contract, and we won't stop until they have that right. And then in March of this year, SEIU helped to put forth AB 2261, which was authored by Assemblymember Laura Friedman. This bill will allow community representatives to foster stronger ties with more parents and help more students succeed in the following ways: by lifting the cap on the community representative work hours, by allowing school sites to invest in keeping their parent centers open and accessible for more time during the school year, making the community representative position a permanent classified position. As classified employees, they will gain the same just cause job protections that all other classified employees have, and it will also, if passed, revise section 45258 of the California Ed Code and make the community representative position a classified position. I do want to say that I am very appreciative of the fact that, not in my young years, but in my adolescent years, I grew up in this community, and I'm a graduate of Santa Monica High School, and I feel very proud to work here in this school district. I'm very proud of the community I work in, and I'm very, very thankful and appreciative that I work in an organization that values the voice of its unions and the work of the bargaining unit members, both classified and certificated. And part of what has come out of the relationships that we have in this organization is labor management teams, collaborative labor management teams, and we work very hard in those committees to come together and problem solve on the front end. I'm especially proud of the work that we've been doing in the Special Ed Labor Management Committee, and We are really onboarding a lot of new training that is so necessary for the paraeducators, but not just that, developing some real professional development for them. And so I feel very, very thankful, and I'm so happy to be working with Dr. Mora and getting her support in the things that we're trying to solve. So I did want to just share that on a personal note. And in closing, I just want to say that as union members, you know, we're not going to back down no matter what's thrown in our path, and we will continue the fight. And I think that we will come up out of this stronger than we've ever been. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. We have no report tonight from the PTA, and the superintendent has told me that he has no report this evening also. That brings us to our consent agenda. Tonight on consent, I want to bring to our attention, colleagues, that we are postponing item 8C14. That's going to return to us at our September 6th, 2018 meeting. Also, I'd like to pull item 8D6. That's the administrative appointments, and then we'll have Dr. Drotti address those directly. And Member Keene has asked that we pull item 8B1, as he will need to recuse himself. That's a purchase order number 187393. Are there any other members of the board who would like to pull an item from consent this evening?
Yeah.
Oscar.
Yeah, so page 1 of the purchase orders.
Is the purchase orders for 1718 or
1718
1819?
for John, and then Oscar.
Yeah, this is for July 19, 2018.
July 19, 2018.
Yeah, there's a legal firm that we've contracted for many years, but they in the past have made a contribution to the organization I work for. It's a purchase order number 187704, Atkinson Andelson, which is a legal firm. And then
Oscar, will you turn your microphone on, please?
Oh, sorry.
And if you could repeat that number.
So the number is 187704, Atkinson Andelson, and they're a law firm. And they've made a contribution in the past. And then there's another one, another law firm called Orbach. Let me see if I get the right. Yeah, Orbach Suarez, and that number is, I just saw it right now, but oh, here it is. It's a 187706.
Thank you, Oscar. So we're pulling 187704, 187706 at Oscar's request, where he'll recuse himself because of his connection there with doing business with those agents. We have John pulling 8B1, which is a PO 1718 at 187393, and the other two that I articulated, one's a postponement and the other's the administrative appointments. Is there a...
Orbach, Huff, and Suarez is also mentioned under the very first FIP item.
Okay.
As
So
their
that's, yeah,
independent
so include
contractors
that
for
one
this
as well.
Okay.
I just opened this one again, but Oscar, I don't know if this is the right one, but the 190046 in the 1819, is that the number?
Is that the FIP, Lori?
No, that's in the POs for the, whichever one. I'm going back and forth between 17, 18, 19. Doesn't for me, that's one of the Orbach Suarez's.
Thank you for Oscar.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take those four, right, the three and the, so let's have, I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent item without those items. That is moved by Craig, seconded by Lori, and this will be a roll call vote. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Dillatore?
Yes.
Mr. Keene?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. So that's a unanimous vote of the Board of Education, Sarah, on all those items except for the ones that are pulled. Let's take the items that first Member Dillatore has asked us to pull. Again, for the public record, that's 187704, 187706, 190046. Those are all POs, and then the one FIP item articulated by Sarah, our Executive Administrative Assistant. That'll be a roll call after we have a motion and a second. Moved by Ralph, thank you. Seconded by Lori and Mr. Metcher.
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez.
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre abstains. Mr. Keen?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that's a 6-0 with one abstention, that being Mr. De La Torre. That'll now bring us to the item that Member Keen has asked us to pull. That's item 8B1, which is a purchase order 1718. That's the year 187393. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ralph, thank you. Seconded by Craig. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
Mr. Keen? Abstention.
Abstaining.
And I'm a yes, so that is a 6-0-1 vote with Mr. Keen abstaining. Thank you, Sarah. The last item to be pulled, we will ask Dr. Drati to address that, noting again that the 8C14 is a postponement. But Dr. Drati, we're now at 8D6, which are our administrative appointments for the evening.
Thank you. I am very happy to introduce our recommended candidates for our newest administrative positions. So I'll first read about each person as they come up, and they'll say a few words to the community, and you just kind of greet the entire community. So let's start off with Sam Goshi, our newest recommendation for Director of Assessment and Research and Evaluation. Mr. Koshi comes to SMMUSD from San Diego Unified School District, where he served as Vice Principal at Abraham Lincoln High School. He has previously served as Advanced Placement Coordinator at Long Beach Poly and has previously taught AP Physics. He is a highly skilled computer user and data analyst. He was a summer fellow at the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo and was a STEM teacher and intern at Caltech. He was a fellow in the NASA Graduate Student Research Program. Mr. Koshi earned a Bachelor's of Science in Astrophysics from UCLA, a Master of Science in Physics from Cal State Long Beach. He holds an administrative credential, and on behalf of the staff, I'm very happy to make him as a recommended candidate for the new Director of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation. So, Mr. Koshi, would you say a few words to the community?
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to serve the district and all its stakeholders. I'm truly humbled, and I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to work with all of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Dr. we're going to do both administrative report, one vote for board members.
Be more efficient that way.
Yes.
The next person I would like to introduce to the community as a recommended candidate for the new Special Education Coordinator position is Mr. Jim Watwood. Mr. Watwood comes from SMMUSD from the Los Angeles County Office of Education, where he served as Assistant Principal and Psychological Services Coordinator for the past 3 years. In this role, he has worked with infants through adults with special needs. He previously served as a school psychologist with LA County Office of Education in the Division of Special Education for more than 10 years. He was a resource specialist teacher and a modern world history teacher and head girls soccer coach in the Long Beach Unified School District, and also served as special education teacher in the Redondo Beach Unified School District. Mr. Watwood earned a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and a Master of Arts in Education Psychology from Cal State Long Beach. He holds an administrative credential. Please welcome Mr. Woodward, as we are very excited to recommend him as the new Special Education Coordinator for SMMUSD.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and I am ecstatic to be here. I enjoy the city and the school district and its rich history, and I am looking forward to spending my time here working for all of you and for our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome. So on item 8D6, is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Metcher, seconded by Mr. Foster. My middle-aged brain is delayed here. And this is a roll call vote. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And I'm also yes. Dr. Doherty, that's a unanimous vote from the Board of Education. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I have under good information here that Dr. Morris says that we could handle discussion items 10A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H together in an amount of, I know, right? A, B, C, D, E. Oh, don't ask me to do it again. Okay, so Dr. Mora, welcome. And of course, noting that we have a 7 o'clock p.m. timestamp, but the law does allow us to delay that for 15 minutes if necessary. Dr. Mora, welcome.
Good evening, Board President, members of the Board, Dr. Drati, Cabinet, and guests. This evening, I bring forth to you routine updates to Board policy and admin regulations. These routine updates are in alignment with CSBA recommendations. So the very first one that you see before you is BP 0500 that deals with accountability. The updates reflect the new accountability system that is currently in place, known as the California Dashboard. This consists of both state and local indicators that assist us in identifying our strengths and areas of need for improvement. And it's been something that we've been engaged in through the LCAP process. The second BP and AR for you to look at is 0520.2, and this is the recommendation for us to delete this, and it has to do with our Title I program improvement schools. This needs to be deleted because we are no longer under NCLB. So therefore, it's been suspended since 2017-18, and beginning this year, we are under the Every Student Succeeds Act, also known as ESSA. So therefore, it's the recommendation for us to delete this BP and AR. The following is really a revision and updates of BP and AR 5121, which deals with grades and evaluation of student achievement. The updates reflect and support of research-based best practices in relationship to grading. In particular, it really discusses the importance of making sure that we are separating non-academic factors from students' academic grades. What this means is that attendance, effort, conduct, work habits, for example, are not included when we are determining academic, but they can be graded separately, so they shouldn't be influenced. We also included an addition of an optional paragraph to be written in order to elaborate on student progress if needed. The next BP is 6111, which deals with the school calendar. Again, the addition in this particular area has to do with the language of meeting or exceeding the funding target under LCFF, of which time we would be required to have a minimum of 180 days. Previously, the BP really only talked about 175 and didn't clarify this information. So this is in addition. The next BP for us to revise is BP and AR 6171, which is Title I programs. When we're looking at this particular BP and AR, we're really looking at making sure that we are using our Title I funds to supplement and not supplant any programs. Title I funds are created in order to augment the services and programs that students are currently receiving. Also, it's important for us to be able to identify under our LCAP how we are addressing the needs of all our students. And the LCAP now takes the place of what we used to previously have to create the LEA plan. So the LCAP now takes that role. Additionally, we have to make sure that we are identifying how we are providing services to not only our Title I students, but our schools that are not Title I. So how are we providing comparable services to students? This is demonstrated not only in our LCAP when we talk about how we are using our Title I funds, but also in the LCAP addendum that was part of the consent item for this meeting. Additionally, you will always also see that there's updates that reflect that under the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, school-wide programs and targeted assistant programs have to make sure that we are implementing our SPSA. So this is something that we are currently doing. All of our schools develop the single plan for student achievement, engage their school site councils and communities. This is really about updating the language so that it reflects ESSA and not NCLB. The next particular BP and AR is 6178.1, which is work-based learning. So these particular changes really look at moving information from our AR to the BP, and identifies how we need to make sure that we're bringing forth to the board any plan that identifies work-based learning programs. So this before used to be in the AR, now it's moved into the BP. Additionally, it really speaks to how the board needs to approve if we are going to be paying any student wages. Additionally, we are reflecting the new law, which is AB 2063. And this authorizes us as district to grant credit for satisfactory completion of any work experience education program to students ages 14 and 15 when the principal identifies that this program is needed in order to complete a CTE program. Additionally, you'll also see that provision of AB 2063 was included that allows our students to participate in job shadowing activities for up to 40 hours per semester during intersession or summer school session. If, again, our principal or administrator who is overseeing it believes that it is necessary for them to complete the CTE program. These particular updates will really be guiding the work that we continue to move forward with, especially as we look towards really improving and strengthening our CTE programs. So we are really looking forward to making sure that we're engaging in that deep work this year. The next BP is 6190 that deals with the evaluation of instructional programs. So this really looks at the suspension of the API, which is the Academic Performance Index, which was under NCLB. So again, this is really making sure that we no longer have that language within that BP, but it also identifies and adds the homeless student population as a student group that we need to ensure that we are monitoring and that they are demonstrating appropriate gains through the services that we provide. We also, it also identifies the use of the new tool, which is the federal program monitoring. As all of you know, this past year, we engaged in this process for our Title III programs, and we received feedback on how we can strengthen the programs that we are currently delivering. So this is also highlighting that it is now the FPM process that is being utilized to provide feedback and support to districts. And lastly, we are looking at revising BP and AR 6200, which is our adult education. In this, you'll see that there are updates that reflect the new law, AB 105, which really establishes the adult ed block grant to fund specific types of programs and to coordinate services through the regional consortia. So really, we're making sure that we are updating all of our board policies and admin regulations to reflect the changes that have taken place in law. We also identify that the district can use additional funding beyond the sources that have been presented before you. And we also talk about how we need to make sure that we're clarifying what courses are being offered and that they come forward to the board and that they need to be approved by the board and CDE. You also saw that within your consent agenda today to approve those courses. And then you're able to also see that there's been some deletions and some additions within this particular BP. Within that, it's also the addition of the evaluation of the program. So being able to come back to you and share with you what courses are being offered, how did our students do, how many students participated in those courses, and how we intend to improve the program as we move forward. And also something that I would like to highlight is that there was a removal of using the F1 visa as a limiting factor. So now it's open to all students regardless of that particular item. So at this point, I open it up for questions to the board regarding the recommendations to revise these particular BPs and delete the one before mentioned to you. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Question goes to the one about Title I program improvement schools, and I think it's mainly in the AR. It might be referenced in the board policy, but the issue is this: it's not really the language as much as the issue. Mm-hmm. We did have to send letters and allow for families that wanted to pursue transfers because our schools were in the second year of program improvement, if I remember this right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there are some students, it's not a lot, but I think some students did transfer. So they are presumably still at the schools to which they transferred. And so my only concern is almost well, it's both what happens to them and if we delete the entire policy, that's the basis for them ending up at wherever they are. I don't know whether they have to reapply, and if so, what will happen to them. And I feel like somehow, somewhere, we have to be clear about that in writing. And I don't know whether it's
So the one that you're talking about is BPAR 0520.1, which is the Title I Program Improvement School. So the reason it is being deleted is because we are no longer under the NCLB. So I will hand it over to Dr. Kelly to talk about our permit process for that.
So it was student services that facilitated those transfers. We didn't in any given year get a large number of them. It was a handful. And when I say a handful, it may have been somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 10, and 10 would be a high number in any given year. We probably could go back and find out. It was a form of intra-district transfer that our inter-district transfer policy governed at the time. And what our inter-district transfer policy says is that once they transfer, that becomes the home school. So we would not, as a matter of practice, have them go back or do anything. They were secure in their spots when they made that transfer, and that information was shared with them at the time when they transferred.
okay. So you don't think there's any need? All I'm trying to avoid is somebody coming forward at some point saying, you know, my kid's been at, I don't know, Franklin for 3 years, and now you're not worried about that in any way. And I guess I'm thinking about it, the way we could fix that if we needed to is to just add something about this tiny category in our permit policy as opposed to here, which we're deleting, you know, sort of their holdovers from NCLB transfers. I mean, there'd be a way to frame it, but
yeah, I just
don't want there to be no record somewhere if anything happens of, you know, I mean, even though I hated NCLB, things happened as a result, and so I just want to.
I'm not particularly worried about it because I said the intra-district transfer policy had at that time and currently still has that once that transfer was made,
it becomes their home
it
school.
Becomes their home school,
okay.
And those were within the language of that policy.
Okay.
Lori, is that satisfying?
I guess so. I don't know. Okay. I mean, as long as nothing happens, it does. I certainly understand that would be our intent. You know, I can't help it. It's the lawyer in me that wants it to be in writing somewhere. But,
Dr. Moore, is staff opposed to the suggestion that board member
you
Lieberman
can
is
look
making?
at it. I'm not hard and fast about it. I just want to make sure we.
What we can do, and I'll definitely work with Dr. Kelly to figure out what might come up. I think if any questions would come up, particularly for students that were that did require a transfer due to Title I, that we would make sure that we uphold our practice of not that being their new home school. But definitely we can look into that.
Because actually it occurs to me, for instance, let's say you had a child and believe me, I have no knowledge of any of these people, so I'm not speaking on anyone's behalf. But let's say you had a child who transferred from Will Rogers to Franklin, and then their child is now going to go to middle school. They live in the Will Rogers district, so do they have to get a new permit to go to Lincoln, or is Franklin their home school and that entitles them to go to Lincoln because that's where their friends are now, and that's would be the argument?
Yeah.
So that works that way.
But yeah, once they've moved
Okay.
there, like I said, that the language is that it becomes their home school. They stay in that pathway. Actually, that sometimes becomes, they say they want to go back, so we
Yeah,
have to deal with
exactly.
that. But as a matter of practice, if they were transferred under whatever purpose, title, the program improvement was the one type of transfer, that becomes their whole school. They stay within that pathway.
Okay.
Thank you. Oscar?
Quick question. In terms of the AB and AR 6178, the when authorizing the district to grant credit for completion of a work experience, what's the age when a student is eligible for a work permit? I thought it was 15 and a half.
Yeah, I think that's right. If you give me a minute, I can get back to you. I have that information on my computer, but yeah, I think that is right, that they are eligible for that. But let me look.
No, it's cool because, I mean, I'm glad to hear that they've lowered it, it seemed. It's 14 years old now, which makes it more accessible to young people. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then the other part is, it says that it allows students to participate in job shadowing activities for up to 40 hours per semester. Does that include paid, like a paid internship, or this is just volunteer at all? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I think there's that distinction, right? When you're thinking about job shadowing, it's identifying that's an option for them to do that. So it would be something different than an internship, because an internship is definitely could be identified as something that is paid or volunteer. Mm-hmm.
40 hours seemed a lot for a job shadow, but that's fine. It seems that's another really good thing. And the last one is, are we identifying students who are homeless now? Do we have? Yes, we are. And do we know approximately how many students in our school district are classified as homeless?
I didn't have those numbers, but I can definitely send those in a Friday memo for all of you. But that's part of what we have to report throughout the LCAP process. So it's written in there as well, but I can give you those numbers.
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I would appreciate that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Ralph?
I believe, Mark, don't you have that number? Didn't you provide that to us recently?
No.
It might be in a more recent. Yeah, let's send it again.
Mrs.
Dr.
Brown, I think, may have done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two questions. I'm confused on the 6111. The district must offer a minimum of 175 instructional days until it meets or exceeds the funding target. Is that the state fulfilling the funding target?
Yes.
So they're saying until they give us the money that we're due, it's 175, not 180 days. It's not something about our funding. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
And then on 0500 on the dashboard, when does the dashboard, which is the latest dashboard? Do we have one for last school year?
Yeah, the dashboard is available now, so all the data, is available for us to review in the dashboard.
Based on 16, 17?
Yes.
And when does the
And
17?
18. So we can actually go through the dashboard now and begin to look at the data for this past year.
And when does that 17, 18 dashboard
We
come
will
out?
be sharing that information with the board as soon as we have
But
everything compiled.
you're not sure when that will
Well,
be?
if we go onto the dashboard, we can access information and on the dashboard currently for spring 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe just send us the link so we can do that. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Dr. Moore, that concludes our comments and questions from the Board of Education. And so what I hear is the chair is that there are no substantive changes that need to be made, and we can expect these board policies to return under our consent agenda at our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is in August. But I see that Dr. Kelly has his hand up.
I just want to answer the question about the work permits, age 14 to 17.
Oscar? Dr. Kelly says 14 to 17.
For work permits.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Dr. Moore, thank you very much. Friends, that brings us to our joint session with the FOC, and I see that the chair, Ms. Debbie Mulvaney, is here with some of her colleagues. And Ms. Mulvaney, we welcome you.
Is it on? No, there's no line.
Accused Debbie of not being heard. I can't hear you very well.
Okay, just, Oh, Carol says it's on. Okay. So, thank you. We are here for our annual report, joint meeting and report to the board. Let me just review sort of the charge that allows us to do that. The Financial Oversight Committee was established originally to serve as the Measure R Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, as well as to provide monitoring and review of the district budget, the City of Santa Monica Joint Use Agreement, the City of Malibu Joint Use Agreement, the district audit, enrollment projections, revenue and expenditure forecasts, the capital program and public education, and regarding district program. I skipped a line. The City of Malibu Joint Use Agreement, the district audit, enrollment projections, revenue and expenditure forecasts, the capital program, and public education regarding district finances, which we do throughout the year as we overview your audits, etc. In addition to our regular oversight responsibilities, we also have 4 subcommittees this year that handle special finance-related issues posed by the Board of Education and the CBO. For this past year, we had 4 subcommittees. First was financial benefits of sustainability. Mr. Jacobson, Ms. Slaw Nahas, Mr. Levis Fitzgerald were the members of that committee for the second year. That subcommittee was tasked with identifying potential cost savings through sustainability measures at the district. The subcommittee explored the potential long-term financial benefits as well as upfront costs of sustainability recommendations. The subcommittee sits on the district sustainability committee, and Mr. Jacobson will report to you on the work that was done this year. The second of our subcommittees was chaired by Ms. Krennick, also including Mr. Farivar, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Sweetmore. Unfortunately, none of them are here this evening, so I will be reading you their report when we get there. This subcommittee was formed to allow for FOC representation at the district budget subcommittee meetings and board budget workshops and provide research and guidance as requested on budget-related issues. The specific task was to evaluate the types of spending at Samo High relative to other similarly sized high schools in comparable districts to determine how their spending patterns compare to how we spend money here. This is ongoing research, and I will read their report to you when we get there. The third subcommittee was on health benefits. That was chaired by Mr. Kramer. Mr. Landris, Mr. Larmore, and myself comprised that committee. The purpose of that subcommittee was to analyze the current health insurance spending of the district and its employees on health insurance benefits and compare it to other school districts and or other similar institutions. Our research into our own district was extremely enlightening, and we provided that information to staff for further study. Mr. Kramer will report on those findings. Finally, our fourth subcommittee is an ongoing subcommittee. It is the bond oversight, chaired by Mr. Lee. Myself and Mr. Larmor sit on that committee. The purpose of that committee is to be involved with any type of financing the district is planning, whether it involves the bond authorizations for Measure ES or other contemplated district financing. The subcommittee met with the new bond financing team, and Mr. Lee was scheduled, but I will read you his report when we get there. So I'm going to turn it over to the beginning of this, which is our sustainability committee, and Mr. Jacobson will report to you on that.
Good evening. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks. And thank you, Debbie. I think Debbie spoke pretty eloquently about everything we've done. I'm going to hit some of the highlights because I know we've got a lot to cover tonight. First of all, it's been a great pleasure to work on this committee and the other members of the committee as well, and also to watch in the last year the evolution of what the board has done with regards to sustainability and some of the efforts that we did over the last couple of years and see those efforts put into practice. as I mentioned, some of the highlights, we were very involved in the Continuous Energy Improvement Program, which we were happy to serve on as an ad hoc subcommittee with staff. We were also recommended that the board hire additional staff, which moved forward. We recommended the board engage on a consultant around sustainability. That also occurred. We also, after that consultant was hired, we met extensively with Cummings and continue to be part of the Sustainability Committee, and we're very encouraged about the efforts that are going along those way. Just two things that I'd like to highlight in terms of the meetings we've had with Cummings and Sustainability Committee. We were strongly encouraged by our subcommittee to recommend budgeting practices around sustainability, and we hope that the recommendations that Cummings makes certainly follow those efforts. We also recommended that there be some renegotiation of the Southern California Edison contracts, which we identified early on in the process as being a huge potential money-saving opportunity for the district. And probably most interestingly enough, we encouraged staff to approach teachers about their appliances in their classroom, and we know how difficult that is. But we're hopeful that as the staff gets and the board approves a policy, that those lovely refrigerators that each teacher likes to keep in their room is reviewed. I'll leave it at that. Lastly, as an overall effort, we understand the FOC's, our responsibility is financial oversight. So we would appreciate the board encouraging staff to work collaboratively with us in the coming year as the Cummings report is evaluated, as the board develops their sustainability practices, and perhaps the FOC could be involved in an annual survey or an annual review of cost savings, which we'd be happy to participate in. Additionally, we'd like to see that the board commit the resources to allow for that to occur in terms of ongoing sustainability coordination. And some of our members were very, very interested in seeing that the board perhaps commit the financial resources to allow for classroom curriculum and in particular practices that encourage sustainability. So that's the highlights. I'm happy to take any questions or wait till the end, whatever is determined. Okay.
Prefer that we ask questions after each of the reports? Is that okay? All right. Members of the board, do we have any questions for Seth? And where the sustainability report? John.
Excuse me. Is Carrie still in here or no? Hey, Carrie, I know we've talked about this. I just want to reiterate, as a liaison to the FOC, the great work being done by this committee. I just want to make sure that we, as a district, use the resources of this committee when we have these discussions. So, Carrie, I know you do your best to be inclusive with all this stuff, but if we could keep Seth as chair of this committee in the loop for future sustainability conversations, I think it only makes us stronger moving forward. So I would appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John. Oscar, and then Craig.
I just want to support the work. Thank you, Seth, for all the good work on this committee. I think it's a very important committee, considering that, you know, especially in our students at the high school level, this is one of the most important issues that we've seen here. As school board members, you know, a lot of young people in our community care about these issues. Obviously, it's their future, and so it's right along with our values, and I'm glad that we're supporting our values through our financial oversight committee oversight, but also the our bond project and the future construction we're doing in our district. So thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what John said.
Thank you, Craig. Seth, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so I'm going to just talk to you now about the district budget subcommittee. The budget subcommittee was tasked, as I said before, with studying comparable high schools to potentially identify opportunities for enhanced efficiency and or validate current Santa Monica High School practices. We are in the process of conducting this analysis and have determined that interviews and possible site visits would be required for proper analysis. It does appear that some high schools with similar demographics are able to achieve similar performance with fewer resources. It is important to understand how these schools are structured and how they provide these services and support their students. Many offer innovative programs and have engaged in significant outside partnerships. The FOC Budget Subcommittee will continue our review and hope to provide findings and conclusions in the fall. Just to review a little bit about the methodology and the approach. At the March 7th, 2008 FOC meeting, our CBO, Melody Kennedy, requested that the FOC Budget Subcommittee begin analysis of comparable high schools. The committee then developed a list of data points to be analyzed and reviewed this list with Ms. Kennedy and Dr. Drati. Additional data points were added as a result. Next, we identify which schools to study. The process included multiple data sorts starting with 1,309 high schools, narrowed down to a list of 287 using size range, test scores, and other things that are similar to Samo High. The next sort eliminated schools with a percentage of white students over 50%. The third sort eliminated schools with CASB math scores below 45%, and other things of that nature so that we would get more comparable study comparisons. That left us with 26 schools to choose from. After meeting with the superintendent, we included Dos Pueblos Senior High, which is part of Santa Barbara Unified, and Clovis West High School, which is part of Clovis Unified. You'll see a list of, do we have the chart with the list of schools? I don't know if that's up there, but there in your packet you would have seen a list of the schools that we ended up with. I don't know, I don't want to sit here and read through the whole thing to you. But the data collection began and an analysis began through various websites, Ed Data, Great Schools, Forecast 5, a number of other California School Dashboard, and the schools' websites themselves. That's the next one. So we'll skip that. This is for the one that follows me, Sarah. It's fine, it's in the packet, and we'll just leave it at that. It was clear from our initial analysis that a proper study was not possible without conducting interviews and site visits, because we don't all call things by the same name, and we didn't want to make any assumptions about what we call something versus what another school called and assume they were equal. So as a result, it is a little premature to present any findings at this time. We are going to continue into the fall and do the interviews and perhaps the site visits, and then we hope to provide findings and recommendations if they become clear at a future time. So that being said, I'm now going to turn, we're going to turn that on, Sarah, and we are going to have Mike Kramer speak about the Health Benefits Subcommittee.
Debbie?
Yeah.
Debbie, we have a question.
Sorry. I mean, I agree with the cautions on that. And if you recall, a number of years ago, there were these kinds of discussions in a broader context. And we were looking, people in the community were looking at why are we spending, X percentage on library services or technology or this or that. And it's really important, in addition to interviewing people, talking to people, is to understand how other districts, if we're looking at their budgets, is how they are coding certain expenses.
Well, that's why I meant we can't just assume that because we call them the same thing that they really are the same, right, which is why we need to delve much deeper.
Right, because we may, like you say, it may look like we code something a certain way that somebody else puts in a different category.
Right.
It can, and until we really figure that out, it's hard to, so the deeper, take the time it's necessary to go as deep as you need to really have a good understanding of, for comparison's sake, to bring stuff that we can look at for recommendations.
Right, and that's why we even had suggested site visits, exactly for that reason, because we wanted to be sure that when someone calls something a counseling service, that it encompasses everything we encompass in counseling or the like. So that's exactly to your point.
So you say site visits, you don't mean just to our schools, you mean to these other districts?
Yes, we mean to go to these other districts that we're evaluating their high school, because we're using Samo High as our basis for comparison here. And so we would do our sort of paper analysis first, and then sort of come up with a list of questions and then go to these other high schools and talk to their administrators about what the places where we either see a lot of agreement or a lot of disagreement to really understand what that means.
And is there a reason why we are not, or could we be doing at the same time the analysis at Malibu High School?
We could. I think we just don't have the capacity to do more than one comparison because clearly the size makes a very big difference in terms of what our comparable schools would be. If we found that this process was successful, we certainly could then follow up with a second analysis. Okay, Mike?
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Debbie. Welcome, Mike.
Good evening, board members. So Mike Kramer, chair of this FOC Health Benefits Subcommittee. We prepared a PowerPoint subcommittee. It's 14 pages long. We're not going to go through all of it, I hope. I think I'd like to probably just focus on the highlights, our findings, and then go through the rest a little quicker. I just turned it off. Okay, there we go. So the subcommittee has this mandate at the top to do this comparison of the district's health benefits with other districts, look for cost savings, et cetera. Because the district began negotiations with the CTA and the SEIU while we were in the middle of this process, we essentially kind of, throttled back our work around March, and at that point, so we're giving you some observations here. It's not the full scope.
I don't know if they can hear. Can you hear him? Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I just was trying to get you.
All right, thanks. It's not the full scope that you'll find in bullet point 1, but we think it's helpful. So we have 2 pages of findings. So over the last 10 years, the district's health benefit costs have increased by an annual average of 4.9%. It's worth noting at the same time, general fund revenue averaged 3.2% growth. So there's a gap there of 1.7% that's ongoing. And also along that vein, health benefit costs now represent 9.5% of the budget, and they were 7.9% in 2008. You could say, well, that's it's a 1.6% difference. Doesn't seem like a lot, but in dollar terms, it matters. So the district offers health benefits, medical, dental, vision, et cetera, through PERS. So PERS offers to the district and other agencies 3 PPOs and 7 HMOs. And who pays for what in terms of health insurance premiums, the district or employees? It's laid out in the labor agreements, and there's 2 labor agreements. I think it's important to note that the district currently pays a fixed percentage of the medical insurance premium, not a fixed dollar amount of the insured employees. There are other districts, and I think staff has probably provided information on these districts where they've transitioned to it being a fixed cost for the district rather than paying a percentage of the premium. So this linkage actually creates some volatility, not only for the district, but also for employees as the PERS rates change from year to year. So we focused on this past year, fiscal year 2018. 91% of the health benefit premium costs were paid by the district and 9% were paid by the employees. It's also worth noting that there's quite a difference between employees that are hired before and after a certain date. So, because the cost sharing is radically different. So employees hired on or after July 1st, 2014, pay a significantly greater share of their medical insurance premiums, and the district pays much less. And it's vice versa for employees hired before July 1st, 2014. 80% of the employees roughly that are now with the district were hired before 2014, July 2014, 20% after that date. We observed that employees that were hired before July 1st, 2014 tend to select plans with higher premiums, and those premiums are paid by the district 100%. I think we observe that, and it also makes sense. It's kind of human nature. So employees hired on or after July 1st, 2014 preferred plans with lower employee costs. So we have a small table here at the bottom of page 4. It's broken out by the hire date. So if you look at the far left, if you're an employee hired before July 1st, 2014, on average, the district pays $13,600 of your premium total, and you pay $480. That's 96% versus 3.4%. If you were hired after July 1st, 2014, the split is, not 50-50, but district pays about 66%, and the employee pays about 34%, for a total of $10,000 a year. And you could say, why is one $10,000? Why is the other $14,000? I think it's because the employees that were hired after that date tend to gravitate towards more cost-effective plans, HMOs versus PPOs, et cetera. And then we have combined all the employees on the far right. You can see, so the average cost right now for employee health insurance is $13,280 per year. Those are the main observations. Here we just have more detail. You can see the graphic of health benefits over the past 10 years. Again, the health benefits are outpacing the growth in general fund revenues. Here we present the health benefit costs per FTE and also per ADA. This is a brief summary of the benefits. Again, these are all laid out in the labor agreements. We focused on medical because that's where most of the costs are. So again, it's all through PERS at this point, and the district offers 3 PPOs and 7 HMOs. So a little more background here. You have 1,100 employees that have selected medical insurance. 225 employees have declined coverage. It's about 17%. And about 3/4 of those receive the cash in lieu payments offered by the district. Now, the difference of 225 versus 157, they declined coverage, but they also elected not to take the payments. That's a question mark we had in the numbers. So also worth noting here that the employee hire date, it did not affect the cost paid by employees for dental and vision. It's more of an issue for medical. This is a rundown on the split. I would focus on the red at the top. So you can see for the full-time employees hired before July 1st, 2014, with medical, the district pays 100% of the premium, except for PERS Care PPO, where the district pays up to the cost of the Kaiser HMO. And the employee pays the balance, which usually for these employees is 0%. If you were hired after July 1st, 2014, you will pay a fixed amount equal to 95% of the lowest cost HMO. I'm sorry, the district pays that portion. So the employee pays the difference between the cost of the lowest HMO. So I think this table kind of breaks it out. So this is medical costs, tentatively rates for single coverage as opposed to your employee and spouse or family. So if you look at the middle column there, full-time employee hired before July 1st, 2014, you can see the employee cost is relatively zero for those plans except for PERS Care in the red, where they pay $37 per tenth, and the district pays $771. The column on the right is for the other set of employees that were hired later, and the district cost there was fixed this past year at $461, and the difference between the district cost and the total cost is paid by the employee. Kind of covered this already. The date of hire does affect the medical plan selection. So the plans with the lower cost to the employee are preferred by the employees that were hired after July 1st, 2014. So graphically, this is the district's average cost for medical per insured employee. At the top are all the plans. So the district cost averages $13,000, and the employee cost averages about $6,700. As you go down from the plans from top to bottom, you can see the cost comparison of those to the employee and the district. So this is the insured employee's average cost. So you can see if you were hired before July 1st, 2014, which are the blue lines, it's very small. If you were hired after July 1st, 2014, that is your share as employee that you pay. So you can see the inequity between the employees with these higher dates when it comes to the medical insurance premiums. This is more data on the selections of the employees, HMOs versus PPOs and higher dates, et cetera. Kaiser Permanente HMO, the PERS Choice PPO, and Blue Shield Access HMO are the 3 most popular plans. We kind of covered this, but again, this is the same detail by plan and by hire date. And the total cost comparison for this is the district's perspective. So district expended $13.71 million on medical premiums in 2018. Employees contributed $1.3 million. And that's it. Any questions?
There's probably lots of questions. Mike, just one clarifying question from me. On the one chart, there are actually employees who are not taking the cash in lieu, even though they're eligible for it. So they're just not taking the coverage, nor are they taking the. Okay, thank you. Oscar?
I would just, I mean, thank you. This is a pretty amazing analysis. I really appreciate. One question that I have in my mind, because we've been receiving emails, you know, from staff. I don't think we received that many in the past, but it seems like it's hitting hard now. And one question I have, and I don't know if the committee's asked this question, sort of, at what point does this become a problem for us in terms of retaining high-quality staff or attracting high-quality staff? Like, was that ever a discussion? Did we have that type of dialogue in the committee? And is there anything that came out of that dialogue that can inform this board?
I would think if you're trying to attract teachers or employees, they're going to fall into the post-July 2014 category. So therefore, their share of medical costs is much higher than somebody who was hired before that date.
Thank you, Mike. So that wasn't part of their charge. I just do want to caution my colleagues that we are in an active negotiation, and so not to go sideways of fair labor negotiations on this item. No, I think it was a fair question. Most certainly was because within the scope, I think the way that Oscar phrased it was absolutely okay. Was there, you know, a recruitment and retention question that's most appropriate? Are there other questions for Mike? Craig?
I don't really have a question in light of what you said. I guess I'll just say this. This brings home to me in a couple of different ways things that I hadn't fully understood until now, and we've had lots of data. So this emphasizes to me the importance of the FOC, of good data. Our new hire tonight, you know, I think we're on the right path, but I mean, we've got work to do here. This is, I'm glad we know it. I'm sorry it is the way it is.
And I think it's important for the board to know, just as a chair report, that we have entered into agreement, the district, with both of our collective bargaining units into a health benefits committee, as you know, and that committee has met twice, and that committee will be, you know, afforded of this incredible data as well. So, and it's exciting that that is now underway, and they have met twice, right, Dr. Draddy? Great. Thank you. Mike, thank you very much. Debbie?
Okay, so the last of our subcommittees is the Bond Oversight Committee, and I'm just going to briefly go over what we did this year for that. The Bond Subcommittee is chaired by Gordon Lee, who is a member of the FOC and also vice chair of the Prop 39 Committee. The committee meets to discuss topics related to any type of financing the district is planning, which would include the 2 bond authorizations, both Measure BB and ES, and any other contemplated district financing. The committee convened only once this year, just recently, on June 20th, to meet the new financing team hired by the district for financial advisor, ISOM advisors, underwriters, Raymond James, and RBC, and the Bond Disclosure Council, Jones Hall. Staff and the Finance Committee presented at that time a contemplated $120 million Series D financing, which the board, as you know, has recently approved. And then a similar presentation, a shortened version, was given to the FOC by Gordon the next day. As you will know, as I'm sure you know, there will be a rating agency meeting in San Francisco this coming Monday, July 23rd, with executive district staff, John Keen's going, of the board, and the financing team. Whenever there is an issuance of bonds, it is required for us to be reviewed by the rating agencies of Moody's and Standard & Poor's. Last year, the district achieved the highest credit rating possible by Moody's, a AAA rating. With Standard & Poor's, we hold a AA rating, one step below the highest possible rating of AAA. Earlier this week, there was a preparation meeting with district staff and the financing team to go over the presentation for Monday's meeting. Closing of this financing is expected in early September, and then we will report back to the board the performance results after that financing goes through. So now to put my chair hat back on, we need to talk about our potential charges for 2018-19. What we recommended, and I think, Sarah, there is I don't know if we have that chart or not, but our suggestion was to continue with 3 of the committees. The District Budget Committee, as we spoke about, is just beginning their process of evaluating and their research, and that we'd like to continue. We'd like to continue with the financial benefits of sustainability. There it is. Financial benefits of sustainability, and continue to be part of that ongoing conversation. And clearly the bond oversight, which is an ongoing committee, needs to continue. In consultation with our CBO, we have 2 other recommendations to put before the board. The first is to do some research regarding legal counsel, to look at outside consultants versus in-house counsel at other school districts, just to see if there are financial gains to be made by doing it differently than we do it. And the answer may be yes or maybe no, but it would be nice to know, just to take a look at how other people deal with the same issues. The other issue that was raised has to do with revenue enhancements. And the first one is probably more financial related than the second, but this was sort of supposed to be a little bit more all-encompassing charge. The first one was to look at the possible financial implications of creating our own SELPA. Right now, we have a SELPA with other school districts, but the notion of having our own SELPA where other school districts would pay us to send their children to our programs where we had room, and therefore would either reduce the costs to us or even potentially increase revenue if we could get there, especially in light of how expensive special education programs are, is something that we would like that we were recommending taking a look at. The other one, again, is a little, I'm having not sure how that would exactly come to fruition, but it has come to our attention that some of our schools are just shy of being at the Title I level, which would allow them to have certain benefits, and that is determined by the number of students on free and reduced lunch. And we know that there is clearly a stigma attached, especially at the middle and high school, about being on free and reduced lunch. And so there's sort of a financial component and sort of not here, as far as evaluating. Perhaps the research we could do would be more in line with how close are we in the different schools, and then sort of so that we could make a determination if we were close enough where it would be wise to make some effort to try and have those students who qualify apply for those benefits. So I open it up to the board for
Debbie,
discussion.
And for colleagues, before we get to the discussion part, if that concludes the presentation, we do have public comments. So I would like us to hear from the public first, and then we'll go to our collaborative deliberations together. Thank you so far. John.
The Board of Education will now hear comments from the public regarding this specific agenda item. As per the Brown Act, board members may not engage in discussion of issues raised during public comment, except to ask clarifying questions, make a brief announcement, make a brief report on his or her own activities, or to refer the matter to staff. Speakers who have submitted a public speaking card will have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody who wants to submit a speaking card now will be limited to 1 minute. Speakers and members of the audience will be asked to refrain from expressions of support or disagreement that would intimidate other speakers or disrupt the meeting. We have 3 speakers on this topic: Carol Carty McNeely, Catherine Handelman, and Peggy O'Mara Searles. Sorry, it's hard for me to say. So you'll each have 3 minutes. Thank you. Carol?
So I can speak from here, right? Okay. So first of all, I want to thank the Financial Oversight Committee for their contributions to our district and all the work that they do for us over the years. I'm very appreciative of it. In reviewing the document during the Health and Welfare Benefits Subcommittee, I did have 2 specific questions, which the clarification will help in our analysis. When I look at the percentages and differences on page 3, they differ from those on page 5, and I'd like to get more clarification and specifics on what these statistics represent, whether dependently or independently of each other. Also, how is the cost calculated for budget projection? Specifically, is it done by FTE or by actual cost from previous years with a percentage increase applied? And the reason for that, if it's done by FTE, then my question is the district using non-benefited employees in the FTE formula? When SEIU looks at the report, we do want to tease out some of the data as it relates to district costs that is specifically associated with classified employees' benefits. And this is essential because a high percentage, at least probably 30% if not more, of our bargaining unit does not have health benefits. So the specificity of the data is important to us because currently a 6-hour classified employee is already contributing 25% to the cost of their health and welfare benefits in addition to the current structure for new FTE hires.
Thanks, Carol. Our next comment is from Catherine Handelman. Go Roosevelt.
Good evening. Hi, my name's Catherine Handelman, and I am a kindergarten teacher here at Roosevelt Elementary School. I've worked here at SMMUSD for 13 years, and I really love my job. Just wanted to point that out today. I also went to the training today that Jenny went to, the Reader's Workshop training. It was excellent. Anyway, I'm here to share with you my concern about the rising costs of healthcare for our newer teachers. When my fellow SMMCTA members voted to approve that new teachers would be paying for some of their health care, we were told and we believed that the cost would be approximately $50 a month. And that seemed doable and not a huge burden. But now things have changed, and now our new teachers are paying over $300 a month for part of their health care. And this now doesn't seem like a benefit, but a burden to them. I am concerned, as I'm sure you are too, about attracting and keeping excellent teachers at our district, especially because the cost of living is so high here in Santa Monica. This is also a big concern. I know my fellow teachers would not have approved this if they knew at the time that we were going to be asking our new teachers to be paying over $300 a month for their health care. I know that my fellow senior teachers are also, besides me, I know that many of my fellow senior teachers are also very concerned about the burden we've placed upon our new teachers. I hope that we can all work together to solve this problem concerning the cost and benefits of healthcare for our newest teachers. Thank you.
Ms. Handelman, I have a question, please. Would you say that most of your colleagues, I know you probably can only speak for Roosevelt, are aware of the new joint committee that the district and CTA and SEIU have put together on health benefits?
I would say some of them are, and we have reached out to people. We reached out recently to people, but it is the summer, and teachers are trying to recharge. So, you know, if the district reached out to more people and let them know in a district email that they wanted people's input, I'm sure that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peggy O'Mara Searles. I am fourth generation Santa Monican. I went to Grant Elementary School, John Adams, and Santa Monica High School, as did my parents and my family. So I'm very honored to be here and speak in front of all of you. I thank you for all your hard work that you do. And I am a 18-year teacher in the district right now. I'm a special education teacher. I'm currently on the CTA negotiating team, and I'm also a part of the Health Benefits Committee. So I really appreciate this report that we received today because it gives us a lot of information and knowledge going forward. I also want to thank Mr. Foster and Mr. De La Torre for your comments saying how you feel about this report and this information. That means a lot to all of the employees of SMMUSD. So tonight I do come here as a teacher, but I come here basically as an employee of SMMUSD. The healthcare currently, as it stands, for 2014 employees, including administrators, some of them sitting with you today on the panel, our SEIU members and our certificated members are significantly impacted by the way the contract reads right now, which is that we will pay 95% of the lowest healthcare insurance. Ms. Handelman, as she addressed, that this has gone from I'm going to loosely do this because I don't have the hard evidence, but $50 to double, triple increase. And the fact that some of our SEIU members and other members are not currently covered for health is, I think, something everybody in this room tonight would agree is not acceptable in Santa Monica. As somebody who grew up here, the school district is why people move here. The school district is why people seek employment here. And you have lifelong invested employees in this district. We want to keep them lifelong. We want them to pursue the excellence that has taken us into all these facets of being blue ribbon schools. I know that personally in my school, we have wonderful custodians, SEIU. The pay that a custodian makes versus what I make, I know is significantly different. And I am constantly rotating through custodians in my classroom. And this relationship continually being broken, the retention of employees, it concerns me. The same with our teachers. I have teachers who are yelling, crying at me because they're so devastated by the impact of what they're paying for health care. So when we look at this report and we consider it a cost savings goal, it's not a cost saving goal if it impacts the health and future of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we get to our discussion, I'm going to take a note that I have a comment or a question for staff and also Miss Jenny. And Carol, I think that it's important for the district and for our collective bargaining units, since we have agreed to this health benefits committee and particularly the kind of spirit behind it and what we're hoping to do with it, that we are working better together at making sure, summer or not, that everybody knows what the intent of the committee is. And I think because of some of the, not because, the emails that we're getting as members of the board, this is just my speaking for myself, that's not getting out there. So perhaps, Dr. Girardi, your team can get together with members of the representative bodies and work to get word out as to what the intent of the Health Benefits Committee is supposed to be. It is outside a bit of the interest-based bargaining. And then this will bring us to discussion items, to the discussion, and Debbie, you'll come back up and join us and members of your team, and we'll go Lori, Maria, who else had a hand up? Ralph, Craig. So Lori, Maria, Ralph, Craig, Oscar, everybody, but we're gonna go in that order. John, you wanna be on there too? I have nothing right now. I have another, okay. So it's Lori, Maria, Ralph, Craig, Oscar.
Okay, so first I wanna say a really, really big thank you to the thorough and excellent and helpful work that you all do throughout the year. And I really think I know I speak for everybody when I say that. It's really helpful. And the one thought I had, and this is for us all to consider, is since most, you have about a third of the members here, maybe? A fourth, maybe? So all I was thinking about was for next year, whether maybe if we changed either to June or September, I feel like July and August are tough times. You're always going to lose a lot of people. So just a thought. I wanted to talk a little bit about, just because it's a nice time to have a dialogue with all of you who work on all these things. So about and I definitely think continuing to work on the things you're already working on is a given. I just want to make a few comments about the proposed new charges. Going backwards, I guess, from the last one, I don't think that the issue about increasing enrollment in free and reduced lunch is an FOC charge. I think that's something we should care about and work on as a district, but I think it falls more within somewhere in the district, maybe in the family engagement arena, school by school, where I just don't really see this as a something that the FOC sort of is in a position to really do anything about. So I think acknowledging that it is an issue, that we think we have people who are eligible who are not subscribing to the program, okay, but I just don't see it as an FOC issue. That's where I am on that. In terms of the SELPA and exploring the possibilities of that and what that would mean in terms of enhancing program, maybe enhancing revenues and program and opportunities, I think that's well worth exploring, and I think it's something that's been kicked around inside the district for a few years, but I don't think we've been able to move forward. So I think that sounds worthy of exploration. And on the legal one, I guess I have an opinion of where we're going to end up. I'm not opposed to doing it, but I think you have to think carefully about how you do it. Because I was thinking about it myself. We use, off the top of my head, I could name 6 law firms who do 6 different things here, and there may be more. And when I think about the differences between what they do, you could collapse some of them. You could use one firm to do several of those things if you wanted to. I don't know that that's a major benefit, but it could be done. But I feel like for the most part, we get really high quality work in the way that we do it. So I wouldn't want to convert to some method where we lose that. And I can't imagine how we would have anybody, or even any very small law firm, that we could have in-house that could do the variety of things that they do. So it's, I feel like, in a way, to think about bringing it in-house is to, if we had somebody in-house, I'd have them do things that nobody's doing as a lawyer now. So that's just adding to our expense rather than reducing it.
And it may be, Lori, that that's in fact what the result shows. I think the question was just raised about, we're sort of doing that from gut instinct as opposed from sort of analysis.
Well, I don't think it's just analysis. I think you'd want to look at, you should go to similarly sized districts that have, for instance, similar issues. They got to have big bond measures that require bond counsel and all those kind of things. They have to have, I mean, one law firm, Pillsbury, I mean, most districts don't have litigation, fortunately, over PCBs. I mean, some of these are sort of one-offs that shouldn't be really considered. And I'm sure that there are, I mean, I know this from talking to other board members in other districts at CSBA meetings. There are districts that have one firm that primarily handle, I mean, we have 3 firms that work for us in different capacities, all of which are always represented at CSBA trade shows. So I'm going to guess, I know that 2 of them, and probably 3 of them, do a variety of work and could do what the other one does. We have a hotel, so we have sophisticated leasing that we use yet a different law firm for, because that's not what ordinary district lawyers do. So all I'm saying is, if you want to look at it and we think it's worth it, that's fine, but I can tell you off the top of my head some of the really unusual things that pertain here that don't pertain to most districts our size. If you're like LAUSD, of course you have your counsel inside, but we're not that. And so I'm skeptical that we would go there, but.
Well, we serve at the
different ways we
pleasure of
could-
the board, so if that's not something you want investigated, then it comes off the list. So it was
let's
simply
hear
a
from other-
recommendation.
No, other people,
Let's
and
hear from other
again, I'm not
members.
saying we can't do it, and maybe it's a good exercise. Look, since I've been on the board, people have raised that issue with me, and some of them are lawyers who have raised it. So, and I've given sort of a similar sort of response, because the longer I've been here, the weirder it gets in terms of, or I know maybe not weirder, but the more I think that possibility is just not viable. But, you know, there's never any harm if you have the time and the energy to look at all of these things. I just really like the work that you've been doing and think it's really valuable. And I know it's in support of things that we're trying to do, like sustainability, figuring out how to address the health benefit problem that has been clearly, spoken to this tonight. So anyway, enough said.
Thank you, Lori. That brings us to Maria and then Ralph.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much. I think the committee did a great job. Will be interested in getting back, for all of you coming back with more information on the things of the comparable high schools. Because even at the high schools that I'm looking at, a couple of them we visited, and the other ones are like Tustin and Sequoia, which is like, I don't know if not even in the area, but whether, the numbers are kind of close, but I would like to, see how comparable they really are to SMMUSD besides just the numbers. But I look forward to that, because I think that maybe might be able to answer some of our questions regarding the type of program. And since, for the first time in a long time, I think for the first time at all, when Dr. Drati and Melody actually gave us a budget, a report on the budget in terms of what minimally this district, programming should look like, and all the extras that we have, and what we have to look at in terms of what we're going to begin to shake out in the next year or so. I think it's interesting to be able to have whatever information you might have to kind of give us suggestions in terms of what we begin to, as we oversee some of these programs, what ends up being taken or not, or tweaked or whatever in terms of the future budget. But that's good, thank you. The other thing is I agree with Lori in that sense of legal counsel in terms of future charges, because we did have somebody in-house at one point. We did hire somebody that was here for maybe a year, or I don't think it was more than a year, for special education. And it was just too much, because I think at that point it was before we actually went through our audit back in maybe 2008 or so, when we went through the major shakeup. And that one attorney just couldn't handle all that amount of work. So it really, we had somebody, but we still had to have, other special, the counsel there for special education anyway. And yes, again, we're a small district, but we have such unique issues that come before us that I don't know whether you're ever going to find a law firm that has, what do you call it, that does everything that we would need. And for some, we're even kind of put in the situation, let's say with Doubletree, that we've always used that firm because they're used to seeing, they're the only ones that knew our contract. And rather than spend all the money of getting another firm to relook at everything, we've kept them on. And that's been kind of the issue, that we've kept them on because of the issues that have been carried on over for so many years that we just kind of left it alone. The only other thing I think that's creative, I guess, Stelpa, we'll see what that, if you can find that's great. The other thing about increasing enrollment and free and reduced lunch, it's so interesting because in the past, I don't know if everybody remembers Mr. Flashlight, that individual that used to send us these interesting emails, and that was his main issue, that how do you increase, and somewhere along the line that we weren't doing our job in terms of increasing the enrollment in free and reduced lunch. But I think it's not an issue in terms of, how can I say, something that I think your committee would I agree with Lori, it's something more I think that we have to take on. And I think at some of our trainings that we've been to, especially with CSBA, they brought up that issue, that sometimes families just, because of the stigma that it sets up for them, they don't apply. But if educated, and they said that if they understood how important it was, if they did qualify, just to apply and enroll, doesn't necessarily mean they would take the services. But the fact that if we could convince them to apply, it would increase our numbers so that we would be able to actually get more funding in this district. So I think it's a way we approach. I know that we have our new director, our coordinator of family engagement, so maybe it's something that maybe it could be tackled through them in terms of the families that we're talking about, that to get them to understand what does this really mean for the district. And maybe we might be able, you know, to be able to create some trust with them so that maybe they understand and they would you know, fill out the application. I don't know. But I think it's something that I think we have to do internally and not really for your committee.
I agree with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. Ralph and then Craig.
Thank you, Debbie, for your leadership and ongoing commitment to the district and our students, and to all the members of FOC for all the good work. One question, Mark, maybe you can answer it, or Dr. Mora. The issue around free and reduced lunch, are students identified? Is it two separate issues? One that were identified on income level. The other issue is that they're signing up for the programs. Do we know that whether students are eligible different than they're partaking of the programs, or do we not know unless they you know, tell us what their economic situation is?
So in order for our students to qualify for the free and reduced lunch, they have to apply through the application every year. So that's the only way that we will know if they qualify for that.
I guess my question is, are our Title I funds potentially lesser because they're not identifying themselves, or is the funding coming through census data and other?
So it can be. So if our numbers fall under a certain threshold, there can be an impact in how much our funding is for Title I.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, is the only way that we're identifying the number of students, you know, our Title I cohort, let's say, only by their identifying themselves for free and reduced lunch programs?
That is one of the measures. The other measure that we also look at is education level of families. But definitely what we need to make sure is that the initial measure by which we identify students under the Title I is through that free and reduced lunch process.
Okay. And it only comes if they self-identify?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, it's an interesting topic, Debbie. You know, maybe there's going to be discussion about it to really figure out how to look at it. It is something I think that's part of the district's discussions that we're having, you know, about being broad-based and inclusion, you know, inviting families to feel good about being part of the district and seeing at the services that can be provided. So I can go either way on it. I think on the SELPA issues, if we look at that, I think a consideration needs to be, are there, you know, when people look at things that say, well, we can make more money doing something a certain way, is to be careful and look at what other obligations might we be incurring. You know, certainly our special education costs are significant. If we're broadening the scope and the number of students, you know, and the services, are we potentially becoming liable for other issues, which I think is an important issue.
The conversation is we have to look at the expense of it as well as the income potential.
Well, expense and
the liability.
You know, are we opening ourselves
Right.
up, you know, to litigation?
I think that's a fair question, and that would have to be part of the analysis.
And I just want to say, you know, that the health benefits analysis, I think, is really sort of a model for how it can, you know, the work that any advisory group to the board can do to really help all of us to understand any particular issue. And this one clearly looks at the data, presents it in a way that helps all of us understand the position we're in, and, you know, helps us move forward to have conversations about those issues. So that's, that's really excellent. And the bond oversight, clearly has done that and been incredibly helpful. I look forward to the budget committee's work. It's the same thing. How do we get to apples, which is difficult to do because, as we've said, that there are different ways one can code expenses and look at things. So it's I look forward to seeing it and the carefulness in addressing that. I tend to agree. I think the legal issues, we could certainly look at it. I'm open to see what comes from it. But it's a good opportunity to see what are the areas that cause us to hire counsel, and are we doing that well? Are we getting the services we need? Is there the possibility that if we took some of that in-house, that it would actually be financially beneficial to us? So I think it's worth looking at it. As Maria said, we did have in-house counsel related to special education, I think, when Dr. Cuneo was here. And after 2 years, I think it didn't really achieve any benefits, in a substantial way, so it wasn't pursued beyond that. But it's certainly to be looked at. For the then I have one more. The sustainability, should we pick a name? It says financial benefits of sustainability and then health and environmental quality. So, that's a label on, and Seth isn't here, that it's called. So I'm not sure which is, the committee should have, on the third page of the memo, what's looking part with recommendation, it says health and environmental quality. So, which is fine.
Well, the actual name is financial benefits of sustainability, okay, but it looked at a number of issues within that realm.
I guess, and I thank Seth particularly and the committee for all the work to help us, move us in the direction we're moving. And I look forward to the report that's coming to us by our staff. And I assume that report will go to the FOC to, just to see first and what comments they might have. And that from, I hesitate to say, well, these are the recommendations we should move forward with right now. I think we want to see that work, which has been ongoing for 6 months, and then from there to, look at pieces that of particular importance, to the FOC group as well, rather than saying, well, let's do these things, focus on the things now, because I know how much work is, our staff and consultants have done in preparation for bringing us something which I assume is going to set a baseline for us, understanding our environmental quality in the district, our carbon footprint, setting goals for reductions, moving forward in the future, and a lot of the things, that are here. So hopefully we can, it can, I guess, shift more from helping to direct the conversation to, figuring out how best to continue to move it forward, which I see as a difference. The one thing that we haven't touched on, which I would like the FOC to consider, similar in a way to the health benefits, is to take a look at our retirement obligations. That's another area of great future expense, and I don't think that, I know I don't, certainly I don't know that other board members do, or even the district as a whole has a full understanding of what those obligations are, how we are or are not paying them, and what, are there ways for us to address that moving forward, because we don't want that to be something that drops on us down the road, that's going to put a huge financial crimp in the services we provide for our students. Thanks.
Thank you, Ralph. Craig and then Oscar.
So thank you all for your hard work all year and your great report tonight. I think this is among, I'll say, the best reports I've seen from the FOC in terms of actionable information and progress, so I'm super happy. I think the health one is extremely useful, and I see that why you've taken it off, because you've sort of come to the end of that, and that's going to move forward with staff, which is really part of the natural process here, so that's great. For people watching at home, for whoever, I mean, the FOC is a group of experts in various fields related to finance and district, various district functions that work all year long in one formal meeting and probably 2 subcommittee meetings during the course of the month. We get enormous value and enormous expertise, and have done since 2000 from this group. And I think the quality of it shows tonight, and it's been a real pillar for the district over the years in many, many ways. And I think it's also a great model for what the DAC process is, where members of the community help the district learn things, see things, study things, digest things in a way that gives us way more ability than we would have necessarily without them. And the way that process works is that the DACs act in support of staff, in this case Melody, who acts in support of the board to ultimately make those decisions. So for me, you guys are here to, I'm sure there's a less graphic phrase, but to pre-digest information, to take a whole bunch of complicated information. And one of the things I think this board does least well is digest information on the dais. I think it's, and not just us, but any process when we're up here, it's really hard to get into the details of something and pull out a meaningful picture. So to the extent that you guys can do work in subcommittee meetings during the course of the year, working with Melody, working with her staff and work things through, she takes that and does with it what she wants, brings it to us. That's enormously valuable. And I say that to remind us of the process, to remind myself of the process. I say that so the public understands the great value you and other DACs provide. And also to say that, and I think I heard yeses from all my fellow board members, but it would have been easy to confuse them for no's. So I think we're telling you that you should in fact pursue these things, and that you will necessarily learn lots of details about them, and some of these or all of these may turn out to be not viable ideas. There may be other ideas that come up, but the idea that you would help Melody and district staff to go through the possibility. So you've got one running, which is district budget, which is going to help us, I don't want to say right size, that's a terrible term. It will help us, as Dr. Dradi is saying over and over again, we want to get our resources in the right place, right? So it'll help us see where our resources are and how we can make sure our resources are in the right place. And then there are other things that might be more innovative or thoughtful, or things that you wouldn't necessarily have the time to consider if you were in staff, because there's so much of, there are so many pressing daily demands that you guys can run down things that staff probably wouldn't be efficient for them to do. So I support legal, I support all of the revenue enhancement stuff, and you'll come back to us and you'll tell us whether there's anything there, and if you find other ideas, you'll come back with those. So I'm grateful to you guys, huh? And I would support the whole list under the theory that the worst thing that comes back is you say, yeah, that was turned out not to be a good idea. I mean, sorry, my teacher's coming out. I say to the kids all the time, Thomas Edison didn't fail. He said, I never failed. I found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb, right? So if you guys find 5 ways not to make a light bulb, we will know better where we are. We'll know that we're on the right path now, and we can say, it's great we don't have in-house lawyers. We studied that and we decided it was a bad idea. So that, learning how to not make a light bulb is valuable too. So I support the charges as you proposed them. I support you guys. I respect you all, and I'm really grateful that you do what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Oscar.
I also want to thank you for all your good work and for many years of service, and appreciate the report. It's a very nice report. One of the, I was really impressed with the study of the high school, of looking at how we can do more with what we have, or do more with less. So I know it's premature to report on it because you're still doing that, but I encourage the committee to continue to look into those questions. I really, I think and I appreciate the free and reduced lunch sort of study, and looking at how we might be able to, bring in more revenue through that. And there's a great opportunity because we're embarking on a whole, remake of our food program. And I think that could be I see it here. There is, in one of the charges here, there's a commit to sustainable and cost-effective food usage and practices that provide for healthy alternatives for children. So there is some thought to that. But being that we're looking at our food program, and Melody's leading that charge with her staff, Richard as well. So I think there's an opportunity for the FOC to weigh in. I mean, there's a lot of expertise, people on the FOC that can that have business acumen, that understand sort of how to make business work, and it would be I think advantageous for our staff to collaborate and to have the FOC looking into the new business model for our food program. What we're looking into rolling out, and it might include increasing the number of free and reduced student applications. So I really support that. I think it's a very good thing, because we can end up having a food program that doesn't always end up losing money, but actually bringing in some revenue. So I'm excited about that. All the other charges I think are great. I agree with Craig, and I understand where Lori's coming from, because I think that we know sort of where you might end up, but I think it's good to go through the process. So I support it. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So that brings us to the end of our.
May I ask?
Oh, you're going to get to close.
Oh, okay.
You and Dr. Drati, we're going to allow that. But Craig and I did just caucus a bit, and we believe that there's no John. What did I say, Craig? Let's we're interchangeable. Yes. We're all one family here. We do have 3 very fine liaisons to the FOC, right? That's Craig, John, and Lori. And we are of the opinion, John and myself, that there's no need at this moment from the dais to be determining which of the charges should be best, but we can come back to the board after there's been further dialogue with the liaisons, et cetera, because I think you've heard some good information of pros and cons about particular things. So at least John and I, that's what we've are going to ask. I also wanted to say thank you very much, Debbie, to your incredible team, to you, the work that's been done. And I do want to just echo something that John said to start, and that I think it was John, now I can't remember, that the FOC is such an important part to the work that the district does. And so, Dr. Drider, we know that you know that, and
that was Craig.
That was Craig. Well, one of the fine people that I have the privilege of serving with said that. But Dr. Drati, we hope that you will carry that forward to all of your staff members, that this is very important to this board. It's very important to the community, the FOC, and we rely heavily as board members on the work that they do. So Debbie and Dr. Drati will get to close this up. Maybe we'll let Debbie have the last word and you go now?
Well, actually, I'll go and then maybe you can. Yeah, you go first and I'll go. You go first.
I should go first? Okay. I think that you've mentioned a few other things besides the items that are on this list. And clearly there's some difference of opinion as to whether we should go ahead with a few of these items. What would be helpful is the 3 ongoing committees, I think, are sort of those are there regardless, because we're sort of in the process with all 3 of them. What would be helpful for us when you get back to us is if you could prioritize the remaining items, because there was the business model for the food program, retirement obligations, the legal issue, whether or not free and reduced lunch really applies to us, and then, of course, the idea of revenue enhancements in the form of perhaps a SELPA. So we probably can handle 4 committees because we're not that big a committee, and we've got 3. So what I would really ask of you is if you could prioritize the remaining list so that we can at least go in an appropriate order, and then may or may not get past the first 1 or 2, but at least we will have sort of a little bit more direction in terms of which ones we should be focusing on.
And Debbie, I think what John and I were suggesting, and we may be overruled by our fellow members, is that there are 3 members on the FOC.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm going to speak for myself, I have great confidence in those 3 members in collaboration with you and your team. They would be able to determine how to do that prioritization
Okay.
and then report back to the board.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the work you guys have done. I mean, the report you did today was superb. I think it'll really help us with some decisions we have to make in the future. But I just want to just acknowledge the importance of what the FOC, and I'm going to go from this perspective. I think it's one of the most frustrating things for me, I think, is to be able to coming from outside. I've had experiences in a lot of different places, but board probably they get tired from hearing from your staff members. Get tired from me. Well, man, we do wonderful things here, but there's a lot of different ways you can do things, and I love the fact that I have community members coming here and actually visiting some of the places I suggested and going around to see how other people do business. I think the most dangerous thing we can do as an organization is put our heads down and just say, we've always done things this way, so let's continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Man, things are changing all around us. Healthcare is one of those situations. We're not in isolation in this situation. There are some people out there that have figured this out, and we need to go learn from people. Some people are going to learn from us a bunch of other stuff, but we also have to go out there and learn. And the fact that I have community members going out is powerful, because it's not just an internal voice anymore. It's also an external voice saying that there is a different way of doing things. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I propose a 3-minute break of the board, and we'll return at 8:25. this now brings us to item 11A, which is a major action item, the adoption of resolutions number 1801A and 1801B, ordering an election in School Facilities Improvement District number 1 to authorize the issuance of school bonds, establishing specifications of the election order, and requesting consolidation with other elections occurring on November 6th, 2018. Dr. Drotti?
Get the presentation up real quick there.
Lori, that was 4 minutes, just to let you know.
You're my hero. You're doing a great job.
So you have to click over. So I'll do the first 2 slides and go from there. The first? Go ahead. Okay, Carrie, go ahead.
I thought you would please say an introduction, but
Yeah.
I can go ahead and tell you why we're here, what we're doing, and sort of lay out a little bit of how we're going to go through this process. Carrie Upton, Chief Operations Officer. So we are coming before you to discuss the question of whether or not you should vote to put on the ballot general obligation bond. And just to say where we're going, it is a staff recommendation that we do that using and applying the 2 school facility improvement districts. And so the way that we're going to discuss this is that I'm going to lay out some of what we've done and what our needs are. And I'm going to do that for the whole district, across the district. Dr. Drotti is going to speak about his outreach and his discussions with the community. And then we're going to have Jared come up, and I'm going to introduce everybody in a moment, but he's going to come up and talk about the polling, the other outreach that we've done, and the investigations we've done as far as that information. So all of that is going to be around both, because we started off with the question of looking at it as a whole, whether we're going to do the bonds, and then what we'll do is we'll split, and at that moment we'll talk about each individual school facility, a district bond, and whether or not to put that on. So we'll talk about SFID, School Facility Improvement District 1, which is Santa Monica first, and we'll have Chick Adams speak about this, and like I said, I'll introduce everybody in a moment. And then we'll have public comment on that, and then board will discuss, and you'll vote on 2 resolutions, and we'll talk about why that is. And then we're going to do the Malibu, or the SFID 2, separately, and also then just introduction, public comment, and then vote on the 2. So we have a little bit of a journey to go, but let me just say that there's a nice group of people here to help us along with the journey. We have Rochelle Vanali and Jared Boygan from TBWB who have been advising us on these points. We also have Chick Adams from Jones Hall, who is our attorney, bond attorney on this. This evening, John Barassi from Raymond James is representing if you have financial questions. And then, of course, we have Steve Massetti, who's our bond program manager. So that's our team.
Terry, we've allotted 20 minutes for each of the resolution items this evening.
I'm going to move quickly.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, we wanted to begin with talking about what we've done, what we're currently doing, and what are still some of our school needs, what our facilities still need. To begin with, we want to say Measure BB was passed in 2006, and it authorized $276 million in bond sales, and Measure ES was passed in 2012, authorizing $375 million in bond sales. The funds from both of these measures have significantly improved our school facilities and the learning in our district. However, we still have some significant needs, and even with this work, we've only done some of what still needs to be done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the whole district all together. I'm going to discuss the high school and middle schools first. I'm going to talk about the preschools and elementary schools second. Then I'll talk about some of the district-wide goals and needs. And I have a lot of pictures, a lot of slides, but mostly it's just images so we can run through this and sort of talk about this. I'm hitting the major projects that we've touched and we might need to touch. There are a lot of minor projects that have already been completed and that are in process that I'm not going to discuss. So begin with measure, and I'm combining both measure BB and ES as I talk about projects as we move through. So these are the things that we've done, with significant things we've done in a little more than the last decade. So at John Adams Middle School, we did new construction of 9 classrooms, entrances, attendance office, administration office, a parking lot, green fringe. At Lincoln, we came in and did new construction of the library, a number of classrooms, and modernization of our science labs and classrooms. At Santa Monica High School, we built the Innovation Building, which was classrooms, science labs, house office, and auto shop. At Malibu High School, we are in construction for the library, the 3 science labs, the entrance building, the admin building. Also, the middle school building is being constructed, and the first one of the parts of that building will be delivered at the end of August. So it is moving, it is happening. At Olympic High School, we did significant modernizations. This is one of our oldest schools in the district, and it really hadn't been touched in decades. So we went in and we did substantial work through that. Both seismic work and libraries, labs, classrooms, bringing that building into greater usefulness. We did some work on sports fields, including the Lincoln Middle School field, taking that from a lovely dirt field and dirt track to the synthetic field and track to be used both by the students and by our community partners. We're also working on refinishing the John Adams gym floor, doing some accessibility work around that gym, and also laying new turf on that extensively used campus. At Santa Monica High School, we added softball to Sealy Field, also added LED lighting to both the softball field and to the football field, which will help us and save in energy and helps with glare. At John Adams, we are replacing our auditorium, which was damaged with seismic issues. And so working with the Santa Monica College, we expect to begin construction in that early next year. And at Santa Monica High School, we are in design in the Division of State Architects, and we've already started demolishing the Science and Tech building so we can build the new Discovery building, which will be multiple classrooms, 2 houses, parking, cafeteria, kitchen, and a pool. So a number of things that will really help replace a lot of really small, non-workable classrooms and spaces, which will really shift the learning there at Santa Monica High School. It'll be part of getting at least 40% of the students out of less than optimal, might even say substandard classrooms, into 21st century classrooms. What we still need to do, though, and these are just some of the projects that immediately floated to the top. We've done major modernization in all of our elementary schools, what we call our window paint floor projects, but at our middle schools, we really haven't touched them. And you can really see at Lincoln and at John Adams Middle School, they haven't been touched for many years, and we need to go in and replace windows, do doors, do the fire alarms, do accessibility, work on paint, and do other things to bring those rooms back into greater usefulness. At Santa Monica High School, we're contemplating that this funding will help us continue in our major San Mohoy campus plan, which is to remake the campus, which would be adding in phases 3 and 3A, which would be a new library, additional new classrooms, and a replacement for the South Gym. We're also in the process of relooking at Malibu High School with a plan to take a complete look at that high school, potentially reorganize it. So we're hiring architects to create a master plan for that. We find that that high school no longer really supports the learning that we're doing. It was built as a middle school, and it sort of grew up in a way that doesn't really help what we're doing there. We also find a real need to separate the middle school and the high school activities in some way so we can really differentiate those and support our middle school learners in a more specific way. So that process is moving along. And then I'll shift to talking about the elementary and the preschools. We replaced Edison Elementary School, which was one of our other older schools that really needed with new classrooms, new spaces that really made a major difference on that campus, really shifting the classroom and the learning spaces. We did window paint and floor modernization. We're done in doing, which really was an upgrade to all of our elementary schools. And this is a major step that we've gone through. We've completed Grant, Rogers, Cabrillo, Roosevelt, Webster, and Olympic. We're in process in construction right now on Point, Doom, McKinley, and Franklin. I hope they all get done, or what has to get done this summer gets done. And we're still in design for Washington West and Muir Smash. So this has made a huge difference in how those classes are, how you can live and be in those spaces, the spaces where we really do the majority of our teaching. Replacing 60-year-old windows at Rogers and at Webster were really quite substantial. Also, we've gone in and done, along with that, fire alarm work, but we still need to go ahead and work on the Lincoln Child Development Center, John Muir Elementary, and SMASH, the Santa Monica Alternative Schoolhouse, and the Washington West Preschool are still needed to be accomplished in this list of modernizations. We've begun adding heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems and electrical upgrades at many of our schools, but we do not have funding in the current bonds to do the rest of the schools. Some people ask, why do we do air conditioning? And it's because we're currently seeing about 15 to 20% of our days in the classrooms over 80 degrees, and we know that learning decreases significantly after 80 degrees, and that makes a difference. When we lose 15 to 20% of our 180 school classroom days to learning, we're not supporting our children. So that's a big project we're in the middle of. Something we've talked about for many years, and we really feel like this is the time to get into that, is taking a look at our old portable classrooms. We have a number of portable classrooms, which are usually considered to be temporary, that have been there for 20, 30, 40 years in some spaces. And it really feels like we need to support our elementary schools. We need to go in and try to go ahead and remove some of these and make some differences to what's happening in our elementary schools, shifting also their ability to teach in those spaces. We've talked about the early learning pathway and adding preschools to our schools, and how vitally important that is, that we get our preschool students there on the campus and starting in the pathway, starting the learning, and we've started it. We've gotten it going at some schools, Grant, Edison, Cabrillo, but we feel like we need to continue moving forward with the rest of our elementary schools, and we find this is really vital to starting the students off right as they go through our process. We have done and completed a lot, and most of, let's see, Bertha was here, but she went away. I wanted to say something about Bertha, is that the district-wide 21st century classroom technology upgrades, we are moving through. We've gotten I think all the classrooms done. I think we're still doing some of the libraries, and we're moving through, still moving us into the technology that supports the learning in all of our spaces. One of the things we really need, and it's becoming really acute to all of us now, is taking a deeper look at safety and security on our campuses. So one thing that we would need additional funding for is to go in, change fences, change gates, change our access perimeters, take a look at cameras, changing our locks, and work on our emergency communications. We find this is becoming more and more vital and important, and something that we need to spend some time, attention, and funds on. As always, in the modernization, we did a lot of work on accessibility, but we really didn't get all of our restrooms touched. And restrooms are important, that they are clean, and they're working, and they're functional, and they're welcoming. So we need to do a lot more work with restrooms. We did a good bit of work in science and technology, but there's so much more to do, particularly to support 21st century collaborative and project-based learning, increasing our spaces for STEM learning, for STEAM learning, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We get so used to these phrases, but they're very important to say that these are the places where we need spaces to do that. And for real project-based learning, we're going to need to go in and sort of give that opportunity and create the spaces that allow students to really learn in those collaborative areas. Another place we find a real need as we continue to do more blended learning and we work from going from lectures to small group learning to individualized learning to needing to like get all the furniture out of the way because we need a big open space, is in our classrooms, a lot of our spaces, we still are using furniture and desks that the kids' parents used. And they're heavy, and they don't move, and they don't function for us. So replacing those with lightweight, movable furniture that's adaptable to the type of learning in the spaces would be very important. As always, we're moving forward with sustainability. We actually opened up a RFP today to do all of the sustainability on the Measure BB projects that were made solar ready. That went out on the street today, hopefully, so we'll move that forward. We're looking at other ways for us to become more sustainable, developing more solar and renewables through all of our spaces. As we're adding air conditioning, we want to make sure that we're also matching that with renewables and with sustainability. So some of the needs that we've talked about, district-wide needs, I'm just going to go through them really fast, just security, leaky roofs, repairing restrooms, replacing portables, constructing more science, technology, 21st century project-based learning, exchanging 30 to 40-year-old furniture, improving playgrounds to increase safety. In our pre-Ks, we're looking at safety and security. We're looking at window paint floor modernizations where we haven't hit those spaces, the HVAC projects, the portable replacement, preschool additions, the importance of having those preschools on our campuses, sustainability, solar, renewables. In the middle schools and high schools, security, safety improvements, window paint floors, modernizations, HVAC, sustainability, a lot of things you might have heard before, but these are the things that we're really pushing on because these are the things we need to do to make our facilities really support the learning that needs to occur for our students now. We have old schools. A lot of them still haven't been touched in years, and so we're asking once again to go back to the voters, to ask them for more help to actually improve our learning facilities. The needs that I list, we still will not be able to do everything we just discussed with whatever bonds we approve this evening. There will be still more facility needs, but just to say these are things, we've done some great work. We've used the money that we've received from our voters very well so far, and we've made major improvements at our campuses, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So we would ask you to consider to put this on put the general obligation bonds on the ballot. One thing I want to say is right now, as far as planning, I did my last push at the end. I forgot I had 2 more slides. We are in the middle of our educational specifications program, which is asking the question, what do our facilities need to be? What do our standards need to be to teach and the learning that we need? And that's going on now. We'll be coming to the board in November with that. We'll be having public meetings through October with discussions about what our educational specifications. That's going to lead us into our master planning process, and with this sort of know what our next projects are and master planning on each campus, what we can do with the funds that we have now, what's still going to need to be done so we can maximize these and make the best that we can for our educational purposes. Are there questions on what we've been doing, what we've done, and what we still need to do before I hand it off to the next person? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know, the solar chimneys that we had at Edison Language Academy, yes, they never really functioned the way that they were supposed to function. And a parent the other day, you know, we were talking about, you know, the bond and so forth, and they asked me a question that I didn't really know how to answer, and the question was around accountability. Sort of, if somebody sells you, this is what he asked. He goes, if somebody sells you a product and it doesn't work, usually you get a refund. And he asked me, did we ever get a refund for the promise of the solar chimney working and not working, or how did that work out? And I know there was one board meeting in Malibu, I remember, where the architects were pointing fingers. There was just a lot of controversy around it. But I want to get ahead on these issues. You know, we're going to be at some point campaigning, you know, to get voters to support this bond. And so when these issues come up, and I don't know exactly what the response is, and if you don't have the answer now, that's fine. We could get that response to us later, because these types of things are going to come up on the campaign trail. And even though Edison Language Academy, I mean, my children go to this school. It's an amazing school, and now it's better because we have air conditioning units, but we had it. That was an added expense that we put in, and parents in the community understand that, and they question sort of, you know, accountability on those types of issues, and I think staff needs to inform the board members, because we're the ones that are going to be on the front line, you know, advocating for, you know, for voters to support things that are ultimately good for kids. So just an issue I wanted to bring up, and if you don't have an answer now, that's fine, but important for you to get back to us, because these types of things or that question for sure has already come up, and I didn't really know how to answer it.
Thank you, Oscar. Lori.
Craig and John are the same.
I have a response. If you like.
Every other person.
I think Edison and the solar chimneys is a great learning opportunity. As an educational institution, it is important for us to learn. And I think that in some ways, the solar chimneys did what they were designed to do, but what they were designed to do did not achieve the function we really needed for our learning, because they were designed to reduce the temperature or mitigate the temperature in a small degree, and sitting next to the freeway, the farthest from the ocean of our schools, that wasn't enough. And we sort of, to be more sustainable, to follow an idea of sustainability, I think we chased an idea as opposed to looking a little bit more carefully about what we could do. And I would say that we've taken that as a very, very clear learning to really make sure that we match what we're doing with our ideals of sustainability with the practicalities of what our goals are in learning. And I have to say that we've talked about this, and this has been very much part of the discussion around sustainability we've had with our sustainability team, and you're going to see that in what we bring to you, is that, and part of the question in construction is, we want to be the most sustainable we can be. We want to follow all of these most important the things that we hold to be most important in this district. We always have to have that looking at it to go, is this the most effective? Is this the most efficient? Is this the best we can do for our students? And I think that that's going to be very much part of the process of anything and everything we do. And so I would say I feel like we've learned from that experience, and I would like to say that we move forward and all of us embrace how we look at that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Lori, then Ralph.
I was going to pick up on a sort of an angle of Oscar's general point, which is, after we move forward on all of these things tonight, we're going to enter this phase where it becomes important that in other realms we'll be participating in a way as advocates, and the district will be still sitting here, district staff, in a position where they can and will need to share information, but not in a way that constitutes advocacy. So to Oscar's that question and other questions, it's true that we will get questions and concerns raised with us, and it would be great for us to have a vehicle for getting some helpful answers that we can then use, so there'll have to be a process for that. And then I was also thinking that there's an opportunity, I guess, for somehow, and I don't want to plan it, or I just want to raise it, for staff to, once school is back in session, share information with the different school bodies. The campaign committees will be out there dealing with the big picture, general public, how to do a campaign at every level, but there will be a need, I guess, a couple of needs internally for board members to get information and help, and for staff to convey information to the schools. So that was what I wanted to raise.
Thank you, Lori. Ralph.
Lori, can I just respond to that just a second, Richard? I know we're trying to move through the agenda. We have heard, and we have definitely want to address, not so much connected to an election, but just connected to what we're doing in our bond program, that we have not been able to communicate, I don't think as effectively as I believe we could, all that we are doing. So I just want to say that to help function and solve that, I'll just take a second to introduce our newest staff member, Chris Clounce, who joined us today, and he is helping Gail and working in our communication team to actually help us communicate the work that we're doing and work with our parents, our communities, our stakeholders as to the work that the Facility Improvement Office is doing. So it's a major step, and we've been waiting. We're going to do this better.
Thank you, Carrie. That response is much appreciated by the board. Ralph.
Thank you, Carrie, and the team for all the work, and this really does help show what we've been focused on, and just part of it precipitated by Oscar's question, which is good, and again, as Lori says, will help us. Will need to be responsive, and doing this work in this way with our team has really, I think, helped us focus our vision for the future, and making our facilities appropriate for the kind of learning that we want to have to occur. And so I think a part of, as you say, it's a learning experience. It's not trying to say, particularly about Edison in this issue, is that we stretch to see something, but one of the things that occurred is that when that project started now 10, 12 years ago, there was a set of criteria that was used to design around for temperature, and it got built to that. And due to environmental climate changes, the system actually isn't appropriate to function for through climate change. And so that's why we immediately had to went and provide the air conditioning there first. So I think it's helped us to be, in a way, even more cautious, more scientific about looking at how our facilities can be resilient and flexible for things that we don't know that are necessarily going to impact us, our environment, in the coming future.
Thank you, Ralph. Maria.
No, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I guess us bringing us always up to date on what has happened and what can happen with this bond. But it's I'll kind of piggyback on something that Ralph just mentioned, because it's true. It's by the time we pass something in, and I'll be honest, when we passed BB, well, first ES and BB, we were behind the ball already. So by the time a lot of these, like the construction begins, the planning is already like stale. But at one point, somewhere along the line, I'm glad we have Steve Massetti on board now, because hopefully at the time even we begin, we look at the plans and what we're looking at, so that we're not building something we planned 10 years ago, but something that's more current. Look, again, reviewing what we have and bringing it up current, hopefully to building something that's at that moment that we're building state of the art, not what it was maybe 5 or 6 years before. So that I do agree that we've never really had a team that I think could look at something from a construction point of view. The people that we've had always in the past, I've been involved with some of these bonds as the first one in X. And when you have retired administrators come in to handle it, what do they know about construction? They don't know anything about construction. So for the first time, we actually have people on board, I think, in the district that know what they're doing in terms of these construction pieces. And hopefully it will alleviate a lot of the losses we took, with Parsons, in that regard. The other piece is I'm glad that we have somebody here in terms of doing, helping Gail, because that's been my biggest piece. It's not just so much in terms of the PR that goes and the marketing that goes with this bond, but just in general. I think people know that they see all this happening, kind of, if you're driving around. But even when you drive around, you really don't see it unless you're walking or you're actually riding your bicycle or somewhere where you can physically see some of the changes that are taking place on our campus. So even if I'm here living on the south side, I'm not out in Montana and looking at Roosevelt or Franklin all the time, because I don't live in that area, but I am more familiar with the south side schools. So in that sense, it's great to have good stories coming out, and stories about families and students engaging, the human interest pieces of it, where you see our students engaging with all this, the new buildings and the technology and everything that's come with it. The fact that they have nice windows and they have nice lighting and all that, whatever it may be. And we've never really had that. So I look forward to maybe seeing a lot of it, in the next few months, especially like now and getting ready as we're getting ready for school. I mean, I think teachers, parents need to see like, oh wow, all these changes have happened in my school. So it'd be nice to have a piece maybe before school begins in terms of what, as families are coming back to school in August, what is there. Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Chris is already working on those things in Gale, so we're getting those ready.
So we're ready for the next piece.
Okay, great. So Dr. Drotti will begin speaking. We'll talk a little bit about his work, and then Jared will come in and follow that.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. As you know, staff has engaged in some work all spring to prepare for the moment when we would bring to you some resolutions to take action on that would authorize the school district to put on the November ballot a vote for a school bond in the district. We've consulted with TBWB Strategies to bring before you some information that we'd like to share before we introduce the resolutions for you to vote on. Let me first thank Jared Boygan and Rochelle Finale for the fine work they have done in providing the district the guidance to get us here at this time. They will help staff present to you some information to help with the decision. Before I pass the microphone on, I'd like to first share with you some anecdotal research and information that I've gathered regarding the feasibility of putting a measure on the ballot in November. As a reminder, you wisely directed me to form a superintendent feasibility committee comprised of stakeholders in the communities of Santa Monica and Malibu. We met 3 times between March and today. Some great ideas were shared at the meetings, and the information was used to further our preparation for today. Furthermore, we've met with numerous stakeholders groups throughout Santa Monica and Malibu to share some information about our plans and seek more input. I personally plan to continue to meet more groups throughout the summer and fall to talk about facts of the bond, not necessarily selling the bond, but talk about facts of the bond. But I've met with the people that I've met so far, for example, are the City Council of Malibu, City Council representatives of Santa Monica, AMPS, SEPS, SMER, League of Women Voters, the PTA Council, the police chief and the police union, the fire chief and the fire union as well. And there will be some other people I'll continue to meet. I'm not going to list all of them. There's plenty of them. There's plenty of them. I can conclude that there was unanimous endorsement of putting 2 separate SFIDs on the ballots for Santa Monica and Malibu from the feasibility committee and all community groups I've met with. The amount endorsed for Santa Monica is $485 million, and for Malibu is $195 million. We didn't stop there, however. We sent to all Santa Monica and Malibu residents a flyer with information about the proposed bond and attached an opinion survey on it. So I thought that information was very interesting. We looked it over at the feasibility committee. At this point, I'll invite Mr. Boygan to share some of those results.
Thank you, Dr. Drotti, members of the board. So we did, we've actually talked to the community in a number of different ways, as Dr. Drotti mentioned. He's had a number of personal conversations accompanied by staff and I think board members at times. The feasibility committee offered their opinions and talked to residents as well. We did, as you'll recall, conduct a scientific voter opinion survey with Paul Goodwin and Goodwin's Strategic Research, Goodwin-Simon Strategic Research. Paul came and presented these results to you at an earlier meeting. And you may recall that the scientific results, this is based on a scientific study of likely November 2018 voters. And we did test the concept of SFID bonds in this environment as well. The results, will remind you, are kind of on the screen here. that there was baseline natural support in both communities to do this. And when we provided additional information, both in the form of here's what the tax rates would be and would cost you, as well as here's what some of the projects would be, support actually was a net increase. And that's nice to see when they know about the tax and they know about the projects and it's solidified. And then again, in the scientific survey, the top uses for project funds across the district, in both sides of the district, in fact, fixing leaky roofs, removing hazardous materials, improving facilities to support math, science, technology instruction, and sort of basic repairs to old classrooms. So sort of the two sides of needed urgent repairs as well as 21st century learning upgrades to support classrooms, labs, and technology for the 21st century. And then the next two slides will show you, again, this is the scientific survey that Paul Goodwin conducted for us. This is in the Santa Monica portion of the district. You can see this is the percent that of likely voters who rated the use of the bond funds as very important. They had a scale of very important, somewhat important, not very important. And 78% every dollar be used for local schools. This reinforces, I think, the approach of the two SFIDs that the board has been considering. This was the top use even in Santa Monica, that the dollars would stay local. Fixing leaky roofs, hazardous materials, as we saw, then math, science, technology, etc., on down the list of other projects. But you can see that everything, really except for athletic facilities, was very important to a significant number of voters, and very close to that 55% needed for passage for arguments. The Malibu project list, the rank order is actually very similar. This is among Malibu likely voters, Malibu in the unincorporated area of the district outside Santa Monica. Those voters who found the projects or the use of bond funds very important, again, topping the list, every dollar used for local schools. The remaining items, projects ranked in a very similar order to Santa Monica voters, although it's also interesting to note that the Malibu voters were even more enthusiastic in the level of importance they put on many of these projects. If you compare this slide to the one before it, you'll see that there is like a 5 to 7 point gap where in many of these items, where while the order isn't any different, but there's more red bar on the Malibu slide than on the Santa Monica slide. So that's interesting and encouraging to, that on the side of the district where the baseline support started lower, there was more enthusiasm even for the projects. So that was nice to see. As Dr. Dradi mentioned, we did send out a piece of mail to everybody in the district, or all registered voters, as well as made available to families in the district, and sent out about 52,000 of these, and include a tear-off mail-in survey with an online option for people who prefer that to get feedback. And you had tremendous response, really high participation, a lot of enthusiasm. Thank you for sending this to us. This was informative. We appreciate the portal for answering, having a chance to give you our feedback and let you know what we thought. Really good responses. So you had over 600 responses, which is a very high percentage for a direct mail outreach like this compared to what we see in other places. It's interesting to note that nearly 80% of those who responded, and we were able to code this because a lot of people included their addresses, name and address, so we went back and we sort of matched them to the file and figured out kind of where they were and divided Santa Monica and Malibu, et cetera. Nearly 80% of the respondents have children in the school. So what you're going to see from this qualitative analysis is very parent-centric. The likely voter electorate is more like a 30% current parents, 70% non-parents. This is an 80% parent universe. So the data is a little bit different and should be treated as qualitative, not quantitative, because it's self-selected respondents. But it's still interesting to see, kind of how people responded. And also, it's interesting to note that you had quite a bit of written comment in addition to just people filling out our survey, which, again, that's nice to see. There was a lot of two-way feedback. Communication is powerful one way, but it's even more powerful when it's two-way. So the Santa Monica information, again, the survey, this is the qualitative, not quantitative survey, but again, in our tear-off mail-in and online survey, we tested some of the same kinds of projects as in the Goodwin-Simon statistically valid survey that we looked at a couple slides ago. And you can see that there's very similar rankings. Safety tended to be a little bit higher. Fire safety and security rose to the top among parents. It's less important to the voters at large. So that's kind of an interesting distinction. It is sort of interesting here that the voters at large actually put arts and music classrooms and arts and music instruction on par with science and CTE and that sort of thing. The parents actually draw a distinction a little bit, so that was kind of interesting to see. And then portables didn't actually rise to the top level for parents, although certainly they do care about repairs, but they really responded to the 21st century learning ideas. Some of the comments, obviously this is not exhaustive, you had many, many comments, but a selection of comments are provided here just to show you the kinds of thoughtful things that people took the time to say. Talk about air conditioning, talk a little bit about portable classrooms. Of course, you had some people complain about paying for past bonds and the cost of taxes, restroom safety, etc. So this is a smattering the kind of comments you got, but again, a lot of appreciation from people that they had a chance to weigh in and tell you what they thought. The Malibu respondents, not a surprise that of those who responded, nearly all of them ranked removing hazardous materials as the top and extremely important. That's not a surprise, but it's always interesting to see a bar chart that goes to 95%. You never see that, actually. Very unusual. And then obviously STEM was very important, fire safety near the top again. And again, just as we saw in the quantitative responses from Goodwin-Simon, across the board, the intensity of interest in the projects was higher on the Malibu side. So that's kind of an interesting takeaway for me, because again, the baseline support was a little bit lower in the quantitative research, but yet the arguments themselves seem to resonate, very deeply. And again, some of the kind of a smattering of comments, really not that different in some ways from Malibu. Some comments about safety, clearly healthy buildings, and the hazardous materials conversation is in the world there. Some conversations about STEM, the importance of updating all the schools, and again, some comments about taxes. We're already paying on bonds. Why do we need a bond? That's typical for a feedback mechanism like this. You're bound to hear from some people who object to paying for it. So my final slide here is just to kind of remind you of the process you've been going through, and it has been, as you get ready to consider some votes tonight, it's been a very deliberative process, and you have checked all the boxes for a process of this nature. So you want to start in the beginning with a feasibility study. That kind of study in many districts just consists of the opinion survey like you did from Goodwin-Simon Research. In this district, it also includes the feasibility committee that Dr. Drotti described. So you checked those two boxes. You convened that committee. You conducted that poll. The poll showed viability, and the feasibility committee showed open-mindedness to the possibility of a bond. So once we had that sort of green light to proceed, and with Dr. Drotti's tireless energy, getting out into the community and talking to folks and listening to folks and really being out there, plus the tear-off mailer survey, et cetera, and then a lot of really excellent work from your staff, facilities department, financial, business, fiscal services department, organizing projects and project lists and getting information available to people who asked about the past bonds, et cetera. So you were able to go through the process of building consensus around the proposal, in this case 2 SFIDs. You've got consensus now, I think, around the $2 amounts, which there's been a lot of conversation. What's the right dollar amount in Santa Monica? What's the right dollar amount in Malibu? And I think you've found the right dollar amounts that your communities will support. And then obviously put them together in a strong measure. And when Chick Adams gets up in a minute and actually walks you through the resolutions themselves, which include some specific project lists, you can see that those project lists also will be reflective of community values and community input. And a lot of the themes that I've showed you tonight from the surveys, both the quantitative and the qualitative, are reflected in that project list. So that's a sign of, again, a deliberative process where the district has listened to the community and that the proposals you're bringing forward reflect those community values and priorities. So that's a good process that you're coming to the end of here. Obviously, tonight is the night for the board to call the election or not. And then after this, assuming the board chooses to proceed forward, it really does become the advocacy campaign. As Trustee Lieberman was saying earlier, that is the time when the hard work starts for the community volunteers. Board members, of course, are certainly welcome to and often are advocates in that area, in that time of the calendar. And as Mr. Delatorre observed, you'll get asked a lot of questions. People are going to want to know what you think, and the community conversation will certainly pick up in intensity at that point. But this is a best practices outline. And I would say that the district has really checked all those boxes. You have been very deliberative, you've been very transparent, you have asked a lot of questions of the community, you have listened a lot to your community, and the resolutions that come forward tonight are going to reflect quite a bit of community feedback that was gathered at a lot of different levels.
Thank you. Other questions for Jared? Dr. Roddy, we're ready for the next piece. Mr. Adams, I believe.
Thank you. My name is Chick Adams, Charles Adams being the longer form of my name. I'm an attorney with Jones Hall in San Francisco. We're your bond counsel. Courtney Jones, who I think you've seen previously, is a partner of mine. So tonight we're going to go through the resolutions. I will walk you through them in probably more detail than you want, but I'll describe to you exactly what you're being asked to do tonight. And let's take them in order of the improvement districts. SFID number 1, of course, is for the Santa Monica schools. You have 2 resolutions, and let me just jump ahead a little bit and describe why there are 2 resolutions. There's a current state law called AB 195, that's the bill form of it, and that requires certain disclosures to be made in the short form of the ballot measure itself. That's the one that you look at when you go into the voting booth and decide to vote yes or no. And those disclosures concern a description of the tax rate that's anticipated for the bond issue, as well as the total annual tax levy that's anticipated. Nobody believes that that statute makes any sense for general obligation bonds. It consumes some precious words in the 75-word ballot measure. What we're giving you tonight is 2 resolutions, the only difference between them being whether they comply with AB 195 or don't comply. And the reason we're doing that is that the legislature has been actively considering revising AB 195 so that it does not apply to general obligation bonds. They're in recess, of course, until August 6th. The deadline for filing the papers with the county is August 10. We're hoping, it may be a vain hope, but we're hoping that they will in fact give us the relief that we're looking for, in which case the second resolution will be put in front of the county. If they don't give us the relief we're looking for, the first resolution goes in front of the county. The staff and I think the consultants all like the language better that's in the second resolution. As long as AB 195 is out there, we don't have a choice, though. So that's the background on why there are 2 resolutions. Having said that, the resolutions are otherwise virtually identical. The gist of the resolutions, I'll just, as I say, I'll give you probably more detail than you want. This is an election, as you know, under Prop 39. Prop 39, enacted a decade and a half ago, lowered the threshold for approving school bonds from 2/3, which the cities still labor under, down to 55%. In exchange, there were some requirements to promote some accountability to offset the lowering of the threshold. One of those requirements is that the resolution tonight must be adopted by a 2/3 vote. Another requirement, of course, is that there's a Citizens Oversight Committee, and in addition, there's a detailed project list, which is part of this resolution. The resolution formally calls the election for November 6th. In the case of SFID number 1 for the Santa Monica schools, it's an authorized amount of $485 million that'll be presented to the voters. There's a map that's authorized to be filed that delineates the exact boundaries of the SFID. County needs that, obviously, so that it knows which properties are voting for which measure. The most important thing it does, the resolution, is approve the long form of the ballot measure, which is in Exhibit A. We call that the full text of the ballot. That's the one that's in the pamphlet that you got. And it's got a lot of stuff in there, including the project list. In addition, Exhibit Appendix B approves the short form, the 75-word ballot measure. That's the one that appears, as I say, on the ballot itself. So those are specified in the 2 appendices to the resolution. There are accountability measures in there, which I won't bore you with. They're pretty much boilerplate. A lot of these, including this, were a feature of the 2012 election, so it's nothing new. There is a finding in here that some of the projects may require state matching funds. We put that in there because if that's the case, there's a required disclosure that goes in the ballot measure. Your project list is so long that I'm certain would be something that would be applicable here, but there's a finding to that effect. Section 10 of the resolution requests that the resolution be that the election be consolidated by the county with all other elections being held on that date. Once you adopt this resolution, it goes over to the county registrar and they take it from there, so that you don't have any procedural requirements for actually conducting the election. There's a tax rate statement, Appendix C, that is also printed on the ballot. The form of it is attached here. That tells the voters what the range of taxes is likely to be in support of the bond measure. And that's about it. I would characterize the rest of it as sort of heavy-duty boilerplate that you probably don't care to know about. So with that, we have, as I say, the two resolutions. The effective dates of these two resolutions are different. The first resolution, this is the AB 195 compliant resolution, that takes effect immediately. Second resolution takes effect only if we get relief from the requirements of AB 195. If that happens, the first resolution ceases to be effective. So you don't have two you're being asked to adopt two resolutions. The fact of the matter is they do not overlap. If one comes into being, the other one goes away. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Are there any questions for Mr. Adams?
Great. Thank you.
And we have no public comments on this item. Lori?
Before we then adopt the resolutions, I just want to state what should be obvious, but I think the amount of work that's gone into this and that's been behind this is really exemplary, from our staff, from Carrie and Steve, to Rochelle and Jared and TBWB, to the legal counsel and all this. I was going to use a Yiddish expression, but yes, that's what I was going to say, Michigas, with the AB 195 and all this stuff that we've never had to address before. And kudos to you, Dr. Drowdy, too, for never having been through something like this and worked with all the stuff that we do in this community, and seeing again, once again, like we saw with the FOC, the incredible fortune that we have with the community that we live in. So anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge all of the great work that's been done, and as I think Maria said earlier, it's true. This is much more a solid and thorough planning and work than we've ever had before in support of a bond measure. So, and with that, there are so many resolutions to pass. I don't know where to start with making motions.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the SFID for Santa Monica Resolution A first.
So moved.
Second.
So it's moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Ms. Lieberman.
I have
and more discussion. Oscar.
Yeah, I just want to make sure
the boundaries are right.
If someone can, I mean, I'm seeing on, I think that's with page, was this A4, but in terms of the concern that parents have been raising around the infrastructure for kitchens, so that we can provide, for a first-rate food program for students and staff in our schools. Where exactly? I mean, I see here that there is some language it says upgrading, modernizing, renovating, replacing, equipping, and furnishing district classrooms, academies, facilities, and other facilities, including kitchens, cafeterias. Is that the board's understanding that language will get us to deliver on what our parents and what our students are expecting around our food program? Is that staff? I mean, maybe staff.
I will say that it is something that we definitely looked at, and we asked, and we did discuss with our attorney that it would definitely, what we are contemplating in those areas does fit in with the language, and it would not be questioned that that's something we could do as part of our project list.
Thank you, Oscar. Ralph?
I think, in that vein, I think it was just at our last meeting that we approved moving forward with an innovative and change in our food services, which the parents brought to us and are very excited about. So I think we're on the way of doing it, and this gives us funds if we need to implement that program.
Thank you, Ralph. The chair, that's me, has made an error, and that we can take A and B together in a single vote. So if Craig and Lori are okay in amending their first and second to include both A and B.
That's actually what I thought I was
So,
doing.
Richard, do we need to read any of it, or sort of talk about what the amount is, and just for the public to understand?
Well, I was going to mention it as we went to the roll call vote, but it depends on how much you would like us to be said. I mean, I think the public should be aware that we have now a motion on the floor, and that this 7-member body is about to vote on whether or not to go to bond to place an item right with the county for election at $485 million and an SFID bond district for Santa Monica. That's what we're about to do, and we have an A and a B resolution, recognizing that they're not overlapping, but one will take place depending on the 195, right? Yeah, the be it resolved is 5 pages.
That's great. Your explanation is great.
So we do need 5 votes here. This will be a roll call vote. There is a motion on the floor. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That is a unanimous vote of the Santa Monica Malibu Board of Education. Thank you very much. And now that'll bring us to an explanation of SFID and resolutions. Mr. Adams is coming again to the podium. Welcome.
This is much simpler. It's essentially the identical resolution that you just adopted. Resolutions, I should say, does exactly the same thing, only for SFID number 2, that of course being the Malibu schools. The primary differences are it boils down to designating SFID number 2 instead of 1, and it, of course, is a different dollar amount that's being authorized. It's $195 million. With the exception of those 2 things, I don't think there's any material difference between the 2 resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ralph Metcher, seconded by Craig Foster. There are no public comments for this item either. Is there any? One comment? Yes, John.
One comment / question, and I hate to turn to Craig, but I'm going to right now. I understand the earnest desire to do 2 separate measures. And I'm committed to that as well. I just want to know, has the conversation been held in depth in Malibu at what's at stake? So I should feel comfortable that you guys have gone deep into this and wrestled, and thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, John. Mr. Metcher, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, Sarah. That is another unanimous vote on the Board of Education. Thank you to our staff. Thank you to all the folks who worked with the folks, to Jared, Rochelle, to Mr. Adams. Thank you very, very much. And I think some different kind of heavy lifting is about to begin in our communities. Colleagues, that now brings us to our last major action item of the evening, which is item 11C. That's to amend the master agreement between Santa Monica Education Foundation and the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District.
The President Vildarin, just would I be recusing myself from this item?
Thank you.
So, it is recommended that the Board of Education amend the master agreement between Santa Monica Malibu Education Foundation and the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. The original agreement between SMMUSD and the Santa Monica Education Foundation was approved in February 2013. Following adoption of centralized fundraising throughout the district. On June 28th, 2018, the board revised BP and AR 3290, acceptance of gifts to separate fundraising vehicles for Malibu and for Santa Monica schools. The master agreement with the newly renamed Santa Monica Education Foundation and SMMUSD will need to be updated based on this change in policy. Attached is you've seen the attached agreement. So today is a vote strictly for the agency for Santa Monica, and then next time we'll follow up with the fundraising entity for Malibu.
Thank you, Dr. Trotty. The chair would entertain a motion. Moved by Maria, seconded by John. This is also a roll call vote. Mr. Metro has recused himself. Do you want to go the other way? Sure. Okay, sure. Okay, Mr. Richard, I'm a yes. Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delatore?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
I'm still a yes going this way.
Okay. Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez? That's
Yes.
a unanimous vote. However, one member has recused himself, the Honorable Mr. Metcher.
Just to show that we can go backwards and still be unanimous.
Yes. Sure, of course we can. Of course we can. So, colleagues, we have no further general comments to be had from the public. Are there any board member comments before we move to adjourn?
I have
Oscar?
one interesting issue that I learned today. I just want to bring it up to staff if you haven't heard it yet. So the story is this. Some of you probably have heard it already. A student gets a non-passing grade in one of our high schools. A week later, that student comes back with an online course that the student passed, and we give them a diploma. And so it's a controversial issue around, online courses, the validity of it, how we approve that. Is it our diploma at that point, or is it a little mysterious thing? Anyway, just something in terms of policy that we should be looking into, and just wanted to bring that concern forward.
Thank you, Oscar. Are there other members of the board? Maria? And then
No,
Craig.
I just want to bring up, because I was there at the last day of the summer school, and I took a tour of all the parents that were there, seeing the projects that the students put together, and just seeing the whole process, and finding out that our Ed Services works so well. I mean, that team, thank you so much, Dr. Moran, that team worked so well in terms of putting the EL program together that summer so quickly. But I was there with Dr. Irene Gonzalez and the summer school principal from Ms. Ipina, yes, from Edison. They were great. I mean, it was unbelievable how well, and so a lot of suggestions came up, and as I was having conversations with them, suggesting that here we always have issues about professional development for teachers. During the school year, I'm having to pull them out from the classroom, and some of the teachers that were there teaching from, like one of them I've met from Franklin was actually teaching there and having the experience of their life because they have never taught students, up from the South Side. So eye-opener for them. So a lot of them receiving not just only teaching, but it was really a professional development piece for a lot of the teachers that participated. So it's something that, and then again they mentioned this evening too, that they had their training from Columbia that came from New York here. So I think it's wonderful. I think if there's any way that we can encourage a lot of the PD to happen during that summer school phase of it, or even during the time when they're on vacation, some teachers are willing to do that. If we can find whatever the money is available to do the training for some of the teachers during that time, I think that would be great. For me, it was like a bit, a high, and I'm sure a lot of the teachers were on a high too, just being there with students and just learning so much, just working with the students. So thank you. I just want to give the kudos to our Ed Services team because they did a great job this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Craig, seconded by Oscar. All in favor say aye. Congratulations, we are done at 9:30.